Chandra in Vrishabha, Moon in Taurus, is the inner landscape of the stabilizer. Here, expression finds form, and one's need for security becomes absolute. By the law of gravity, their magnetism pulls experiences and others to them as they are pulled. The artist reaches for the paintbrush, the writer for the pen, and the dancer for the next movement. Moon in Taurus illuminates and animates fixed earth. This is a manifestation created from endurance. With the senses turned online, sensitivity is heightened to seek refinement that may come in the form of elite status or a simple lifestyle. Emotions are felt with intensity and clarity, an active dialogue forming between the mind and the senses. This can pressure one to cultivate a picture-perfect veneer, a pleasing demeanor, or a high level of self-awareness. One has been nourished to become refined, to seek refinement, comfort, and security. Mother plays a role in preparing the child for high society, high standards, or a high level of emotional intelligence. Moon in Taurus will be called to dig their feet in and root to the earth, become present. Their entire existence depends on it, as they will be called to endure both pain and joy. They are the strong, the stubborn, and the beautiful, attractive, magnetic, creative, and consistent. The life they build is a work of art. This is Moon in Taurus. Hi beautiful souls, welcome to the channel, Soul Awakening with Shantia. Today we are doing a deep dive into the placement of Moon in Taurus. The strong, the stubborn, and the beautiful. Every moon sign video will start with a poetic visual, immersing you in the energy of the said moon sign. Then we will dabble in etymology, mixed in with mythology and esoteric knowledge. After that, we will get into the really juicy part, where we break down the Moon in Taurus, how to evolve with this placement, recognize where one can be weak with this placement, and today we're going to be introducing 19 prominent themes of Moon in Taurus. Yes, you heard that right, 19. These are themes that I got from setting the 6 Moon in Taurus profiles that we will be discussing today. At the end, we're going to share our final thoughts, along with some other interesting findings I found, and we will end with a poetic visual outro, because we gotta always end it in style. So before we get into learning the origins of the Moon in Taurus and what this represents, let's go ahead and introduce the 6 individuals whose lives I've enjoyed studying. Thanks to their account, them recording their life, their writings, their journal entries, I got to get a look into Moon in Taurus, so I really appreciate these 6 individuals. A loving father, husband, and son, he's known for being easygoing, personable, intelligent, calm, cool, and collected. To fulfill his calling as an advocate like his mother, he served as the 44th President of the United States. This is Barack Obama. Also sharing a connection to Chicago, we have a strong, vivacious Chicago native and best-selling author who worked in publishing before finding her true calling as a medical intuitive and spiritual director, who now hosts workshops all around the world. She is a tell-it-like-it-is modern mystic. I'm talking about Carolyn Myss. Also known for being an incredibly hardworking human being, is this individual who was famous since 11 months old. This pretty baby starlet was the perfect picture of the ideal Venusian dream girl, who matured into a humble and hardworking human being, mother, and wife. I'm talking about Brooke Shields. Someone else whose life was recorded since the time she was born is someone who ascended the throne at 18. She also shunned her mother from the palace, fell in love at first sight with her husband, but her life was no fairy tale. Having despised motherhood with 9 children, her image was curated to be a symbol of strength. Her legacy is that of the patriarchal matriarch. This is Queen Victoria. Someone else who is also known for her image is someone who endured 30 years of chronic pain after being injured. Nothing stopped this sensual Mexican surrealist painter and portrait artist from living life to the fullest. Though he was twice her age and size, she married her husband twice. I'm talking about Frida Kahlo. Before her accident, though, she wanted to be a doctor. Someone else who also pursued the path of being a doctor is someone who, for decades, wore the mask of the good doctor, when in truth, he was Dr. Reaper. Resenting the early death of his mother made him transfer his high dosage from himself to his patients, but for them, the dosage was deadly. This is Harold Shipman. So these are the 6 individuals who have Moon in Taurus. So Harold Shipman actually studied for my Monster Inside series. If you're interested in checking that out, please do. He is Dr. Reaper. That's the name I like to use for him because he earned that reputation. All right, let's go ahead and dive into Chandra and Vrishabha, Moon in Taurus. I have this phrase here, what doesn't break you builds you. So one of the statements that actually came to me was, what doesn't you makes you stronger. But I actually like this statement better because Taurus is about building. It's about foundational building. And yes, whatever experiences you go through with that Moon and Taurus energy, it does make you stronger. It does build you. But we have to remember that we build it one block at a time, one muscle at a time. It takes time. And sometimes that pressure, that pain that a Moon and Taurus or a Taurus individual would go through can be backbreaking, literally and metaphorically. Starting with etymology, the root. So the name derives from the Sanskrit root Vrishabha, which translates to rain or to pour down. So I interpret this as abundance or nourishment. Rain is what comes down to the earth. It nourishes the plants, and thanks to the rain nourishing the soil, the plants are able to grow into a lush garden, which is that of Taurus. The literal definition, Vrishabha, translates to bull, but specifically refers to a mature, potent male bull, symbolizing the force of fertility and the animal that makes the earth produce. So now we're being connected to this energy of production. Moon in Taurus for sure is going to be someone who has a mind that is geared towards productivity. So this person is constantly thinking of solutions, constantly thinking of how they can approach something and tackle it. So I'm kind of in an awkward situation. We actually changed our battery to our smoke alarm and it's still for some reason going off. So I think it's malfunctioning. And of course, as soon as I'm getting ready for the video, it started to beep again. So I'm gonna have a lot of fun editing that out. Symbolic association for Vrishabha is in the ancient Vedic texts, the bull represents the divine generosity, strength, stability, and dharma. So dharma is right action, is the way I like to think of it in my head, or righteousness. We can also connect this energy, I wrote here just an additional note, to the Venusian energy of goddess Lakshmi. And Lakshmi represents manifesting through magnetism. So this is different. I mean, Taurus represents like endurance and putting in the work to manifest, but it also is that energy of magnetism. Now, do not forget, Taurus energy is all earth signs are feminine signs. So all earth signs have a level of magnetism where they're able to manifest. You know, essentially, I notice that anyone who has a really strong earth house or earth sign placement tends to be pretty good manifestors. And over a period of time, it accumulates, it builds. Something I also want to note is in this video, I'm not going to be talking about Moon, the exaltation and specialness of Moon. If you're interested in understanding Moon's debilitation or exaltation, that's in my Moon 1.5 video. So there's a brief section I had where I talked about the exaltation. Here we're just talking about the sign. Now, yes, Moon is exalted in the energy of Taurus, and that's because of that stable energy. With Moon and its 28-day cycles, gee, no wonder why Moon would fit so well and be exalted in the energy of stability. But as I'm going through the 19 themes, you're just going to see these repeated throughout, and you're going to see why Moon thrives in this section, and probably why I was able to come up with 19 themes for this sign is because of how it's able to help an individual to thrive so well in life. Now let's talk about some mythology. The Vrishabha avatar refers to Lord Shiva manifesting as Vrishabha, the divine bull, or as the mount of Shiva in a more prominent way. The name Vrishabha means bull in Sanskrit and is often used as a synonym for Lord Shiva's mount, Nandi. Now, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing some of these words right. Sometimes I look up some of them, sometimes I forget to look at them, and so I'm kind of reading it through my notes in that moment. And I try to get the translations because I say things wrong all the time. And then years later, I'll catch myself, I've been pronouncing Revati wrong all this time. I can't believe it. So Lord Shiva's mount, Nandi, who is not just a bull, but represents qualities such as strength, steadfast loyalty, and protection. In this avatar, Lord Shiva embodies the essence of these qualities, showing the connection between the vehicle and the deity who rides it. The Vrishabha avatar is seen as a force that supports the earth, represents loyalty and faithfulness, and is a protector of the Dharma, the righteous path. As Nandi, Shiva's Vahana, he plays a crucial role in many sacred rituals, and this avatar reflects Shiva's association with duty, protection, and the balance of nature. According to Hindu mythology, Nandi is not just a bull. He's a devotee and a companion of Shiva, representing unwavering loyalty and devotion. Okay, so we have that repeated theme of loyalty and devotion. For sure, every single one of these Moon and Taurus individuals had a connection with loyalty and devotion. So the esoteric connection in Vedic astrology, the Kala Purusha is the concept of time personified as the cosmic being. So according to the Kala Purusha, Taurus or Vrishabha energy is represented by the face, eyes, mouth, throat, and voice. So these are all traits, if someone's face, their eyes, their mouth, their voice, these are all traits that make someone attractive. I think this fits it quite well. Moon and Taurus individuals are known to be attractive. And even if they don't have the most attractive features, facial features, they often have a very attractive voice. Yeah, or just speaking, the way that they talk. I want to say affectation, but I don't even know if that's the right word I should be referring to. Okay. And so here's just a zoomed in portion. We have this lovely lady face here looking like Angelina Jolie with those full lips and thick eyebrows. So, right, a very pleasing face. We have the mouth, the eyes. Her eyes are closed in this case. And then we get the throat area being exposed. Yeah, I would say life has been very interesting these past few days because I've been working so hard just to get the notes for this, and I was like, oh, it's not gonna be that long. This video is going to be long, okay? I'm gonna be shooting it in parts for sure. And then we got the smoke alarm going off, and then back here behind me I got a little fur friend we're fostering, and he is a snorer. And he is a heavy sleeper. He is so sweet. It's nope. It's probably 6 to 7 month old puppy, kind of a big guy too. Okay, let's talk about some basic definitions when it comes to moon. So moon, I like to go over the basic definitions just so that we refresh our mind on what these mean. Now, I talked about these in my part 1 video, but not everyone is going to be watching the part 1 video. Some people are just going to go straight to this video to see what Moon and Taurus is about. Now, I do deep dives. I'm thorough. I like to go over the notes and the information, and I like to be repetitive because it helps me to integrate the information better. So moon. Moon is your psychology, which can also be translated into your inner landscape, the imagination, fantasies, sense of safety and security, how we feel nourished, how we nourish. And it can also represent your karmic dynamic with your mother. This is why moon can be also the representation of complexity in our life because of that karmic connection. So for sure, moon always reveals karma. All of the planets do, but moon will definitely share that psychological karma internally, what's going on inside of you that you're holding on to, that you're here to release in this lifetime. And because of that complexity with moon, it is part of our mysterious side that is gradually revealed over time. So moon is our private life, our private self. And so you often will find that celebrities, even if they have a moon in the first house, such as Michael Jackson, the secrets and things come out post-death because they had a private life and we weren't privy to everything. And so some things come out, some things do not come out. But moon can be a very confusing energy because it's mysterious. So it can be quite ambiguous. It actually can shroud one in ambiguity. Like you will never feel like you ever really knew this person. There'll always be mystery shrouded in them. And I know this for sure because I'm related to one. There's an air of mystery about this person. Like they're always keeping something from you. And I think that's just because they're naturally very private, because who wants to expose themselves to the world like that, even if it's in the first house? Taurus is the first fixed earth sign. So this is where manifestation happens from repetition, patience, and endurance. A phrase that can be connected to Taurus, where you can memorize it, is nurturing stability. So the things that you nurture stabilizes, and it flourishes and creates abundance. It grows. Taurus has a strong connection to the senses. So I will go on about that later. But yes, it's a sensual sign. It's connected to the senses. So honestly, this is a pretty, coming out the gate, it's very strong energy, strong sign, because it's connected to your senses. The one thing that we experience in our bodies, like human, I am human. I feel my senses, and we're experiencing life through our senses. So for sure, there's a sensitivity to moon and Taurus energy. Taurus is the energy of abundance, creativity, strength, endurance, hardworking energy, routine, and even tradition. So this could be a quite traditional sign because it's about repetition. And sometimes this sign is very good at taking notes from people, a blueprint, how people did things, and they're going to repeat the blueprint, and they're going to get the same or a similar kind of success. I won't say the same, but they can get a similar sort of success or create similar success. The stabilizer. Moon in Taurus offers one the challenge to create internal stability. So Moon in Taurus crave security, and they will often work hard to achieve it, but their karma is to confront many situations that test this financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. One must anchor deep into the earth, using their central nature to create their inner peace. So as far as their relationships with their mother goes, this revolves around stability, maturity, and beauty. So I found that those words kind of captured quite well what the relationship dynamic with a Moon and Taurus individual is at. Their relationship with their mom revolves around stability. It could have been finances, home life, maturity. Either they grew up fast because their parents weren't mature, or they are seeking maturity because they just want to create stability in their life. They want to be the responsible one. And then there's beauty. So Moon in Taurus is always going to be attracted to beauty because of that Venusian connection, it being ruled by Venus. The evolved expression of a Moon in Taurus individual would be that one uses their senses to create inner stability. They are consistent, creative, mature, abundant, healing, and present. Yeah. So as much as a moon, again, that's like kind of our inner landscape, our inner life. So the emphasis here would be to create inner stability. Inner stability. So whether you make $1 million or $1,000, it doesn't matter. You are going to be called to create inner stability. You will be challenged. You will be tested. And it may come in all forms, financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But without that inner stability, none of those things can be stabilized in your life. And regardless of the situation or your external situation, can you find peace? Now, this is where Moon finds its strength, because most people are not looking to create inner stability or security. That is exactly what Moon craves the most, It doesn't matter what sign it's in, Moon always craves security and stability, but it has to be created internally. So with a Moon in Taurus individual, once they're able to establish this, there's nothing they cannot accomplish. The devolved expression is that one uses their senses to control or manipulate their circumstances so that they can maintain or create inner peace. So the devolved expression is that, you know what? I'm going to try to control or manipulate my external situation, life, things that are outside of me, and try to control it so that I feel at peace. So all earth signs have this issue with being sort of control freaks because, they want their home situation to be comfortable. When I meditate on a Queen of Pentacles energy, she's about her home. So it doesn't matter if this is Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn. A Queen of Pentacles loves her home space. She wants it to be a certain way. She wants to take care of her body, or maybe not take care of her body, perhaps, but physical, sensational experiences she's sensitive to. So one needs the external environment to be to their liking, to be content. This can make them greedy, controlling, hedonistic, an addict, stubborn, resistant, and resentful. Yeah, so hedonistic, when a person becomes like an addict, sometimes people take drugs, or they overconsume, or they overindulge because they just can't handle the reality. So they get lost in chemicals and illusions and delusions because they're having a really hard time dealing with reality. So for sure, this makes for addicts, addictive individuals. It's time for us to dive into the 19 themes. So this is my list. I'm not going to go over the entire list right now. I'm just going to go over the themes as we go through it. It's a long list. Some of them seem like they're overlapping. And yeah, they can overlap, but I separated them into this list. Honestly, I kind of let AI did it. I listed all of the themes I saw, and they kind of put them into subcategories, which was fine. So I'm just going to go over it. And there may be quite a bit of overlapping as we're talking about these 6 individual stories, individual profiles, and how they relate to these themes. Now let's talk about the relationship with the mother, because this is important. Right? In order for us to evolve or to find strength in that moon, and for sure Moon in Taurus is going to teach us a lot about the strength, we need to understand our dynamic with our parents. So this is something internally we have to understand the roles and how it affected us, what kind of patterns it created for us so that we can overcome them. So for these 6 individuals, I have here the relationship with their mother, the dynamic that played out. For Barack Obama, his mother was distant, physically distant, but unconditionally loving. She was educated, sometimes careless, free-spirited, and a passionate advocate. What he admired most is that as a single mother, she was ambitious. She would juggle work, and she did this while pursuing her 10-year PhD. She died of ovarian cancer at the age of, looks to be 52, and he was only 34 at the time. So we'll dive further into that as we talk about the 19 themes. For Carolyn at Myss, she grew up in a very loving, supportive home. Both of her parents were present. Her mother, immediately when she was young, supported her psychic gift, which showed up around the age of 7. She knew from a young age that her life would be different. She had this intuition. She told her mother this, and her mother understood. She knew that her life would be different as far as marriage and kids went. Funny enough, she was engaged 4 times, never got married, never had kids. Brooke Shields. Her mother was overprotective and had lost a baby before her. Brooke was the center of her mother's universe. And this created, between the two of them, there was an immense amount of attachment and a need for approval. So Brooke always sought the approval of her mother. Her mother, since she was young, had struggled with alcoholism. Brooke had staged an intervention when she was 13 for her mother. And her mother said that she was going to do it. She was going to try to heal for her. Her mom was 89 when she passed away. And in her later years, she was diagnosed with dementia. And this was quite startling for Brooke. Queen Victoria. She's known for actually having a terrible relationship with her mother. So after she had been She had ascended to the throne and become queen at the age of 18. She worked hard to essentially kick her mother out of the palace. When she became a mother, she felt like a breeding animal. She had 9 kids. She hated motherhood. It's documented everywhere that she did not like being a mother. She had felt that what Queen Victoria resented her mother for was choosing a man over her. So there's a man, forgot what his name was, but he assisted the princess. Her mother was Princess Victoria. He assisted her. And during this time, while he was assisting her, he was actually pursuing his own ambitions so that he could become king. And he could take over, he can take Victoria's power. Her mother was naive. Her mother thought she was being protective and doing the right thing and protecting their assets. But no, he was just taking advantage. Her mother was just naive and delusional, honestly. And her mother wanted to protect her and she thought she was doing the right thing. Victoria resented her mother for the rest of her life until, the final years for that. The sad thing was that Victoria had essentially repeated a very similar cycle, because when she became a mother, she resented being a mother, and she was very jealous of her husband's attention to their kids. And she was obsessed with her husband. She doted on him and everything. And she had essentially chosen her husband over her kids. They had a really weird, strong attachment because it even affected their kids negatively, as in they weren't getting the full nourishment they needed from both parents. When her mother died, she was deeply saddened by her mother's decline in health. Her mother died at the age of 74. So Frida Kahlo grew up in a very also loving, supportive dynamic. Her parents were always there from the time she was a kid. She had polio when she was young. A lot of the individuals, her mom, herself, and her dad, they all struggled with health issues, major health issues, and they were all very supportive of one another. Her mother was very much the opposite of her. Her mother was a fanatically pious woman, Catholic woman, very religious, whereas Frida was free-spirited and quite gender fluid and artistic. And she got probably a lot of that from her dad's side. He was German Jewish, and he was a photographer. He had also done some other things as well. Her parents had a very weird relationship. They kind of just got married for convenience, I guess, companionship, responsibility. He had been married before. His wife had died early. He had a daughter, and then I think he just wanted to get into a relationship so he could have support with his daughter. And then he had, I think, 3 more kids. What her and her mother related to each other was with hardship. So their family struggled financially. They were very resilient through their struggles, health-wise, physical struggles. She supported her mother financially until her mother had passed away from breast cancer. She would send money to her mom. Her mom passed away when she was pretty young. Her mom passed away at the age of 58. Frida was 25. Where her and her mother were similar is that they both experienced severe illnesses and temperamental husbands. They could relate there. Harold Shipman, his mother was overbearing, but she doted on him. She favorited him. She raised him into an entitlement, essentially, and he adored his mother. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. She was a smoker. She was a bit of an addict, and she was diagnosed when he was age 17. She was 43. He would spend every day after school with her, after he found out about her diagnosis, but then she soon passed away, and he resented her death, making him who he became, unfortunately. Now let's go ahead and talk about the first theme we have here, self-worth and personal value. Now this one I think could easily slip by, but I noticed this was a common theme with the Taurus individuals. You can blend this into maturity, confidence, or knowing one's value. For Barack Obama, his mother worked in Indonesia. His father lived in Kenya. He was raised by his grandparents from the age of 10 and encouraged to embrace a multicultural background. And as far as self-worth goes, I would say what I recognize from him or notice from him is that he uses a lot of self-deprecated humor, to me, that shows me someone who's self-aware. He's very emotionally intelligent, and part of this is his exchange with his sun and moon. So his sun is in Cancer in the 7th, and his moon is in the 5th house in Taurus. Yeah, there's a bit of a connection there. So he is a highly emotional, intelligent person, and with that sun in 7th house, why? Of course, he uses self-deprecation. You know, it's a way for him to keep himself humble and check his ego, because the sun in 7th house will always call for you to check your ego big time. But I would say immense amount of personal value, considering he was the first black, only so far, black president of the United States. And yes, he is mixed, but part of that was the way that his mother raised him. You know, she was unconditionally loving towards him. And she, you know, supported him. She wanted him to be educated and, well, like have good manners and do well in life. But I think she also just allowed him to be himself. So he had a very, I would say for a black man to become the president, you have to have a high self-esteem, a lot of confidence. And he comes off as just calm, cool, collective, very confident and easygoing person. You know, he oozes this. He oozes moon in Taurus. Carolyn at Myss, she teaches empowerment. So she's all about self-worth and personal value. That is what her teachings revolve around. That's how she teaches people to heal themselves. She teaches them to become empowered through their choices. So I would say, as far as maturity goes, when it comes to spiritual maturity, she has hit the peak, because it's very hard for people to discern, you know, what empowerment is, what it looks like, what it tastes like, because most of us have been programmed to disempower ourselves constantly. So she's a very empowered being. She oozes strength. You know, I think the Pluto and Leo in the 10th house definitely helps for her to ooze that strength. Brooke Shields, she talked about how she tried to make herself accessible through self-deprecation. She struggled to enjoy the luxurious lifestyle or feel that she even deserved opportunities. You know, part of that was being, you know, she was famous since the 11 months old. She didn't choose fame. It kind of chose her, but she went along with it just to make a living. But she doesn't walk around entitled like, I should have the best roles ever. You know, she just tries to do what she can for her family, and I'm sure they're doing quite well because her family has a nice $40 million net worth. So she's doing just fine. But what I really like is that, you know, all of her books, her novel, her memoirs are about her struggles and about her being just very open and vulnerable about her experiences, you know, because people always look at her and they think, oh, you must have had an easy life, famous from young, just beautiful. You had everything going for you. You went to Princeton. But she really has to work to build her self-worth. She's talked about her insecurities. So I would say she very much struggles with that Moon in Taurus energy, yet at the same time, she's worked really hard to cultivate some sort of stability. She's a very humble person. So I think it's very much working in her favor. Queen Victoria, I think her self-worth was very, very low, just by the diary entries she recorded where she talked about her insecurities. So her self-worth was attached to her husband's approval and a man's approval. So she had men around her throughout her life. I think there was at least 4 men that she leaned on very heavily to feel confident in herself or feel approval. And people often exalt her as this, wow, you were like this strong queen and you had a 63-year reign. What a powerful woman. But her power and her endurance was a lot more subtle. You know, she, at the time, went with the tradition. That was part of what kept her in power. Had she rebelled she would have been out of the, out of the palace, because it wouldn't have worked. You know, people have done that. Royals have done that in the past where they've wanted to rebel against tradition. She didn't really rebel against tradition. She pretty much went with it, but she was kind of entitled because she was 18 years old, got this power, shunned her mother, who was like the only living person in her life. Her father had passed away when she was 8 months old. So, you know, who was she to lean on for her sense of worth? She got married at 18. So the first one she leaned on was, after her mother, was right to the husband. Women do it all the time. It's an energy thing. Brooke Shields did something very similar. Her mother was so attached to her, and she went to kind of like men to like get it, kind of like create a separation from her mother and become more independent and mature. And yeah, it would kind of work against her in some ways, because, you know, you're not building up your own self-worth from your core. you're building up from some sort of external attachment. Yeah, so in her journal, she had low self-esteem, Queen Victoria. She struggled to believe in herself and just to put up with things, and her emotions were all over the place. She had heavy Pisces in her chart, so it's like that stellium in Pisces really would have made her very temperamental. And its connection to her moon side. The thing about Queen Victoria is what kept her in that position is she believed she was the exception to the rule as an ordained queen. So she actually didn't really support women and women's right or women voting, but she believed she was the exception. So Frida Kahlo, as far as her self-worth goes, it was definitely internal because everything wrong was going on. I'm like, talk about spiritual awakening and life trying to humble you. Getting polio at 6 years old, having an accident and a pole go through your pelvis and your pelvis shattering at the age of 18, and then having chronic pain for the rest of your life. It's like, wow, how did she push through that? She was very immensely strong, like psychologically very strong individual. She was rash and immature in some of the choices that she made. She was impulsive. She struggled to promote herself when it came to her own art. She essentially didn't really promote herself until a lot later on, I think years after she had met or gotten with her husband, Diego, who was a very famous muralist from Mexico. She put up with infidelity. So usually when someone puts up with infidelity, low self-esteem, there was, she was put on bed rest a lot. This made her feel depressed because she wanted to live life. She had such a vivacious personality. She wanted to be out there, living life, experiencing things. But by the end of the day, she learned to value her truth and how she expressed herself. Actually, pretty much everyone here on this list kept a journal. I don't know about Harold Shipman, but everyone here was recording their life experiences. And she kept a journal where she talked about her feelings and how she honestly perceived certain experiences. She recorded it, and it's in her portraits. The pain she experienced, the love. She didn't hold back when it came to how she really felt about things. So that honesty, that integrity was so high. She's a Leo ascendant. Honesty, integrity was like very high for her, an individual. The next thing we have is stability and groundedness. So stability versus instability, grounded energy, being present, realistic, and humble. As a Moon and Taurus individual, you are going to be faced with some sort of instability. If you have any sort of earth sign, you're going to be faced with some sort of instability here. And especially if you have an earth sign in water house, good luck. Because the ground would be pulled from underneath you at some point. So Barack Obama, he grew up with Midwestern values of his grandparents. So self-deprecation tells me he's grounded, he's a humble person, he doesn't take himself seriously. He's known as being a cool, easygoing human being with a good sense of humor. He openly would admit his faults. Someone questioned him about his smoking addiction, which had nothing to do with anything. And he said, yeah, I have an addiction and I've struggled with that. Openly he talked about that. As the president, he was constantly faced with an immense amount of criticism, and I'm sure the presidency also handed him a heavy dosage of reality. I'm sure a lot of those politicians, they're hoping to change the world in some way, and I think as the first Black president, he felt very proud of that. He wanted to do it for not just himself, but the country, for his kids. It symbolized something for him. But the reality of the presidency is the immense amount of pressure that comes with it. The constant criticism. To me, it's just not worth it. So this called for him to embrace diplomacy. He's the sun in 7th house, so that fits as well. But it helped him to embrace diplomacy. It helped him to listen to people's perspective while also sharing his own with clarity, with a calmness. I have never seen President Obama. I've never heard him be upset, never heard a scandal around that dude. It's like, where did you find this guy? And yeah, that came from the roots. He grew up with very humble roots, and he knew who he was and what kind of world he was growing up in, so he found a way to adapt. His mother and father were not stable. His father struggled with alcoholism. His mother was doing her own thing. But his mother was kind of impulsive. You know, she met his father in college at 18 and then had him. Then she met another man while she was in school, and he was Indonesian, and she moved there and created a life with him, and that marriage didn't last either. So there's just kind of this kind of a free-spirited essence to his mother. She would kind of follow the whim of her passion when it came to what she advocated for, and she really cared about advocating for women and entrepreneurship. So he got that from his mother. You know, his mother, she's a white woman who got with a black man and an Indonesian man, an African man at that, from Kenya. It's like, that was very radical at the time. But the experience to her, she was just following her heart and what felt right at the time. And when she became a single mother, she still unconditionally loved him. She wasn't all like, I resent being your mother because I'm a single. No, she just lived her life. And that was part of the reason why she was probably a happy individual, is because she always followed her passion. But his parents were kind of all over this place. His father actually struggled with poverty. His father struggles with unemployment. The irony that Barack couldn't be further from that reality. He was going to make sure he became a lawyer. He went to Harvard Law, senator, president of the United States. He was all about, how can I create more and more stability in my life? He moved into the White House, for goodness sakes. So he established security, financial security, as a lawyer, attorney, and senator. He's been with his long-term partner for a long time. You know, he always thought maturely, how am I going to approach life? Willing to put in the work. So Carolyn Myss, she criticizes escapist New Agers and delusional evangelicals in her own Catholic background, because she grew up from a religious background. She loved it. She loved the experience, but she wanted more. To her, religion is politics. She sees God as law and order. I would say she's very much connected to the earth, and she's always talking about how we're destroying the earth, or how we have to really think about our actions or consequences. She's very into politics in some sense, because she's always talking about how we're like, we have these policies and these things, and, the president's pissing her off because of what he's doing. So yeah, she's very much connected to this reality and here with it. She openly admits her fault. She's a very humble person. Like, she doesn't hold back when it comes to talking about her flaws as an individual, but she grounds people into reality. She's like, oh, poor you. You feel bad for yourself because life is hard. Well, that's how it's supposed to be. Are you going to wake up? What are you going to do about it? That's her approach to coaching or being a spiritual director for others and individuals. She at one point was poor, or like poor. She was making $10,000 to $30,000. I think she said $10,000 to $30,000 a year. While like publishing and her professional jobs. Her rent was like $500 a month, but she said she felt wealthy. She felt abundant, so she didn't really think about it. And yeah, she went on later on to make more money. So that was with hard work. And yeah, so I love that. Very, very humble individual, very grounded. Brooke Shields, she says she's always willing to, not she says, but from what I can witness, she's been working. She's 63 years old. She's been working since she's 11 months old. She was always willing to work hard to make a living. She has no problem working hard. Her mother was not emotionally stable. Her mother struggled with alcoholism. She saved the intervention at 13. So what's going to happen when you're seeing a parent who's an addict and they're struggling is usually the child is spurred into, it makes them become adults. And actually, Carolyn had a similar experience. I'll go back to that in a minute. But it makes you become an adult or mature sooner. Like, you're thinking about the practical reality of how to be responsible. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, this is not a physical maturity, or maturity in this, like, when it comes to making money, it's not the same as spiritual maturity. Now, Carolyn is spiritually mature. Barack is materially mature. Brooke is materially mature. Frida, I would say Frida is kind of leaning more towards spiritual. Queen Victoria and Harold Chipman, they're all about material maturity. So that's about getting a hold of your working hard to create stability in your environment and experiences. It's very external, very external. But that internal maturity, internal groundedness and stability that one creates it's a different kind of species. So she was basically, her taking care of her mother since she was a kid. She was helping pay the bills and take care of her mother, and they were growing financially. At one point she was making up to like $10,000 a day. So yeah, they were doing very well financially. And since then she's always been consistent with, building her success, with that $40 million net worth. She writes books, she stars in movies, whatever she can. And I've never seen her like, I'm too good to do this. She's always like trying to think of practical ways to create abundance for her family and connect it to her passion, something that's creative and fun for her to do. Next person. So Carolyn was, as far as becoming grounded and humble and realistic, is she faced the reality of life when she was exposed to war at a young age. So she's growing up in that post-World War II era, and her father was a part of World War II. Her father had this guilt about his participation in it, and he was crying one time, and she felt just terrible about it. Her classmate's friend came to school to talk about his experience in the war, and she fell in love with history at that point, and it made her just want to like help the world. That's what Taurus people are about. They're like, how can I find a solution to help the world? That's what Taurus is, especially Moon in Taurus. They're like, I need to psychologically create peace in this world. How can I bring peace in this world to other people? Because I can see the suffering that others are experiencing. So Queen Victoria, I would say as far as stability goes, I think physically, yes, she probably consistent. The thing is, her whole life was run by routine, not by her. She grew up with a very strict routine when she was a kid. They called it the Kensington system. She wasn't allowed to be alone. She wasn't allowed to eat certain foods. When she turned 18, became a queen, and her mother, she freed herself of her mother's grasp. She started eating more of what she wants. But according to the royal protocol, you have certain limitations. You can't just do this and that and that. So she lived within the confines of the palace. She lived within the confines of the royal protocol rules. She wasn't able to do everything that she wanted, but that consistency is what built her, probably that discipline, and helped her to live a long life. Right. How long did she live? Like 70? I'm trying to think. 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 71. 81? Yeah, she lived a long time for her age. She was humble in a sense. She didn't have the image of a classist. So her clothes and her images was always about simplicity, wasn't about extravagance. She was not interested in high fashion. She preferred simple living, actually, in comparison. Her rooms, the colors, the materials, they weren't as extravagant as some of her predecessors. She kept things simple. So that's a representation of her Moon in Taurus grounded energy. So Frida Kahlo, you will see in her artworks, there's a lot of images where she captures earth. A lot of earth, plant, a plant-like palette. Leaves, earth. That was quite popular at that time, though. There are a lot of artists who were doing that, like Dali. But his was more, I don't know, it was very airy, like Aquarius or Uranus, I guess. So Frida's family faced poverty since she was young. So she heard her parents struggle with finances. As soon as she was able to, she wanted to become a doctor. She wanted to become a doctor. She was interested in healing. Part of that was because her father had illness. She had illness. She wanted to go and heal the world in some way. But after her accident, that just sort of made it impossible for her, because she was rendered, incapacitated to some degree and placed on bed rest semi-permanently. And during that time, her parents were so supportive. They would show up for her and make sure she ate, and like they put her in the room and they would just try to take care of her and make her as comfortable as possible. So that Moon in Taurus, it does allow someone to have maybe a parent or people around them who want to help them to be comfortable. They will probably live a comfortable life to some extent, and always receive that. So she saw her parents face poverty. Her father, tried to change. He changed his, I forgot what he was doing before, but him and her mother were doing something else before he became a photographer. And then once he started making money becoming a photographer, that's where he's like, okay, I can make this a career. But he also had some like creative traits as well. And she also faced poverty when she was broken up with Diego. They had a very tumultuous relationship, and she was proud at certain points where she didn't want to rely on him, and she was willing to be kind of brokish, and accumulate hospital bills if it meant not being with him, if it gave her a peace of mind. But eventually they got back together in the end, and he helped take care of her. Frida was not a fan of classism. She grew up lower middle class, and then she was promoted to upper middle class, I think, once she got with Diego. She talked about in her journals, she talked about how people treated others in other countries, and she didn't like that stuck-up energy. She didn't care for the cheap materials that they made homes from. And when she traveled in America, she didn't really care about this like bougie way that people would live, or across Europe. She wasn't a fan of it. She loved the simplicity of her culture and the beauty of Mexico. So yes, Frida tried to realistically support her parents. She couldn't become a doctor, but the way that she approached Diego is she showed him one of her paintings and she said, is this good? Is this good enough for me to support my family? She's like, because if it's not, I'm not going to do it. And she actually didn't really do it. I think she actually worked as a stenographer, but not as a painter. It's after she had more access to that artistic world through Diego, and probably her father, that she became more confident with her work, and people were requesting it from her. But she didn't really care about being famous or anything like that, so she's a very humble individual. So Harold Shipman, he worked hard to become a doctor. So he actually became a doctor, and part of that was probably because of the pain he witnessed his mother from her lung cancer diagnosis. He provided for his wife and his 2 kids. I have here 2 kids, but I could have sworn he had 4 kids. I don't know why it has his 2 kids, but I could have sworn I saw he had 4 kids. Internally, Harold was not stable. So externally, he had this good doctor image that he portrayed, where people just loved him as a family doctor, thought he was just the greatest, they praised him. But internally, he was super unstable and resentful. And to the point where he took the lives of 250 individuals. So not a stable person. The thing is, it's a mystery what was going on. And like people just want, what the heck? What is going on with you, dude? No one really knows, because he never divulged anything after they put him in jail. And then he took his life shortly after. So they weren't really able to figure out what his motivation was. They just put the clues together, and they were trying to map it out, why he did what he did and how he did it. But he never openly shared this. He never journaled about it. So no one ever knew what he was thinking. Our next category is career, work, and achievement. So career focus, Moon and Taurus individuals, without question. All earth signs are going to be career focused, to some extent ambitious, consistent, hardworking. They take their work seriously. And this can also make them an advocate, because advocates are about serving humanity with practical solutions and helping people in some way. Earth energy is a healing energy. So when earth energy is elevated, wherever this placement may be, when it's elevated, a person becomes an advocate. They want to care for people. When it's not the most elevated, sometimes they care for people by doing things like becoming the president. that can be very limited, because you're locked into systems when it comes to the presidency. So are you really healing the world? You're trying to, but usually the system keeps people stuck in a system. All right, so let's talk about this. career work achievement. So Barack Obama, he served as the 44th president to advocate for the country with an emphasis on agriculture. So he had an Agricultural Act of 2014. Now this is important because Taurus is all about agriculture. It's about the food we eat, the nourishment, the literal nourishment that we're consuming in our mouth. So he is here creating an Agricultural Act. He's stimulating the working class. So working class, work class. He's helping the people who are working get work. He's promoting a healthier approach. Something called Feed the Future. Again, nourishment in our mouth. What are we eating? Domestic and internationally, his agriculture legacy focused on sustainability, rural development, and innovation. So he was running on this campaign and he pursued this and went on to create this is like innovative technology, innovative ways to help promote healthy farming. The 2014 Farm Bill Obama signed was 1 trillion organic farming, was dedicated 1 trillion to organic farming and nutrition. This was an initiative that took place here. So yeah, there it is. You know, it's written down like what they were doing. Whether this actually helped people or not, I think it may have, because I have never seen more organic things in the store than I have like within the last like 10 years or so. There's a lot of things that have been showing up. So Carolyn Myss prefers healing work over relationships or children distractions. So she dedicated her whole life experience. She's openly talked about this. She said, you know, I don't want a relationship or children to take me away from this work that she loves. She absolutely loves healing work that she does with helping people to heal themselves. She is a bestseller, well-known teacher. She was on the Oprah show numerous times. At the age of 73, she's still actively working to help with healing. Now, I could only hope, I'm not going to even only hope, my goal is to keep doing this kind of work for as long as I can and to help people. So I love that. Carolyn advocates for soul empowerment. And part of that is because of her exposure to war. She believed in the cosmic assignment. Well, how are we going to save this earth? If people are destroying it, how are we going to keep people from war? Okay, well, we got to empower their soul so they stop trying to hurt each other, stop trying to create war and havoc here. That is what she's dedicated her life to. So Brooke Shields, she's advocated for mental health, especially for women. Now we know she's an actress. She's been doing work since very young. She comes out every once in a while. She does interviews. She's known for being a successful career woman. She's also known for being like that ideal woman, that ideal working woman. I'm sure there's so many young women, girls who imitated their lives or copy and pasted their lives after her because of what she was able to create. You know, she was beautiful and she did this and that, and then like people just thought, oh my gosh, amazing. She modeled, she had a Barbie doll of some sort. She had so much power at so young, didn't even know it, wasn't even interested in it, but she had so much power and influence throughout her career. But what she advocates for is for mental health for women, especially. She's been transparent about postpartum issues and medication, psychiatric medicine. She's written numerous books about her experiences with that. She's written about her mother. And, you know, I would say working from the age of 11 months will do that to you. That is tricky. People look at her and they're like, how is she able to survive Hollywood? Now, most of the time, it's the earth energy. Look at someone's chart. If you find some earth in their chart, that is usually how they survive it. People who have water and fire can be successful, can be very attractive, can be very creative, create the best movies. But whether they survive it or not will be dependent on whether they're able to ground themselves and humble themselves and not get a big head, not let their ego grow from these experiences. Now, she has a massive stellium in that Taurus energy, and that really helps for her to stay humble. How does she stay humble? That's how, you know, and that 10th house energy also helps her to be very consistent, committed, and hardworking. She's always been dedicated to the long game. She's always thought about that when she's chosen her partners, when it comes to, you know, the life she wants to create. She's always thinking about the long term. So Queen Victoria, she was crowned queen at the age of 18. She had a 63-year reign, and she lived 81 years. So what was her career? Her career was being queen. So she essentially was assigned her career from the age of 18. Actually, she was assigned her career from the age of 0. So it's interesting. That's very karmic, by the way. When someone has that kind of assignment, with her chart, with seeing that sun and moon in the first house, you would think, oh, that's a chart of a queen. But, it's very difficult. Like the karmic energy in her chart, she's got that Saturn, Mars, Rahu conjunction in Pisces. There's an immense amount of karmic responsibility connected in her chart. Just like Brooke, too, with that 10th house energy. These people were like pre-assigned a heavy load of karma, where they didn't really have a choice as far as whether they're going to be in the system or not. They were very much heavily programmed to be a part of a system. So Queen Victoria was programmed to be a queen, to be royalty, to think she was the exception to the rule. She was ordained. Frida Kahlo, she went to a private school and wanted to become a successful doctor. So that is a very ambitious route. After the accident, she realistically sought out what to do. She worked as a stenographer while consistently painting throughout the years. She taught in the 1940s. So Frida Kahlo, she actually painted a lot. She was very consistent with her painting. She was painting passionately all the time. Whenever she had free time, she would paint. And that is why we know her today, just like we know Van Gogh. Because they were consistently working behind the scenes, not trying to get accolades for their work. They were just doing the work. And that's why their reputations are massive. And a lot of these people, especially these earth signs who, they're doing all this work behind the scenes, their success comes after they pass away, because they were kind of here to go through the karma dharma. It wasn't about the fame or the money, and that's not going to do anything for your soul growth anyways. So Harold Shipman, he was a very active family doctor. He was meticulous with record-keeping, routine, and ritualistic. And this also flowed into the taking of lives experience. He took it's estimated he took up to 250 lives. He was very consistent. I would say he was very hardworking, wasn't he? And I would say when it comes to a doctor degree, it's very hard, right? It's like many years of schooling and study. You have to be willing to put in the work if you're going to become a doctor. So I would say, as far as career work achievement goes, the doctor is a highly coveted position, yet the most difficult one. If you have the mental stability to be able to push yourself to do that, good luck. I know some medical, friends I have, and that is just too much studying for me. Like, you got to be passionate about that to do all of that schooling. Abundance and prosperity. Of course, this is connected to the energy of Taurus because it's the first fixed earth sign. So for sure, this is guaranteed to bring some sort of powerful manifestations into one life. So this abundance is connected to fertility, financial health, physical health, and repeating words here, abundance at the end. So Barack Obama has a $70 million net worth with his wife. $70 million. I would say lots of abundance. Financial health? Yes. I think they've even joked about paying off their student loans before. Right. So they are essentially in that elite class when it comes to wealth. Him and his wife struggled with fertility. So I thought that's interesting. They struggled with fertility. They had kids later on in life. So maybe a bit of, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing, especially considering, spiritually, when you understand the karma that comes with having kids, I wouldn't say infertility is necessarily a bad thing. But, when you're wanting to have kids and you're struggling with that, I imagine that could be a bit of a, you're wanting to create, it's so important for you to create a family home life. For a Taurus person to struggle with that is, a crisis. That is their karma dharma that they're being challenged to push through. So Carolina Myss, she has a $1 to $5 million net worth. She was poor before, but always chose integrity and felt abundant, fertile with creativity. She was stated in one interview saying, "I don't want more than I have. All of that wanting I left behind me. I'm very grateful." So I would say that she's at the point where she's just grateful for the experiences that she has, and she's not looking to amass wealth. She just wants to help people. Brooke Shields has a net worth of $40 million with her husband. She earned $10,000 a day in her youth. She supported her mother financially pretty much her entire life, and she struggled with fertility. Interesting. Very specific theme. She struggled with fertility. So that could mean there's like a affliction. That could mean like a kind of affliction. Since she is a massive stellium with her Taurus energy, that could be hard because the planets are essentially like fighting to get along in that house energy. And so even though it can create wealth and abundance in some ways, it can like create harsh realities in other ways. But this, I'm sure, helped her to endure, to push through, and to build strength within herself. Queen Victoria had 9 children. Very fertile woman. Very fertile considering she didn't like being a mother. As far as wealth goes, yes, I would say very wealthy from the royal family. I think her net worth was $1 million in 1901. That's equivalent of $100 million today. So she's wealthier than Brooke Shields, Carolyn Myss, and Barack Obama. I would say combined, but not combined, if you add it up. So Harold Shipman, as a doctor, he made about 65,000 pounds a year. After unaliving his wife actually claimed the pension, tax-free. So this is about 100,000 pounds, along with her spousal pension. So he worked hard to establish, his wife she was a homemaker, I believe. So he worked hard to establish security and safety for his family. Sadly, what made him get caught was that he did something very shady. He tried to steal 378,000 pounds from a patient he had unalived. Yes, and this patient had kids. I think she had a daughter. The daughter was like, hold on a minute, who is this doctor and why is he inheriting my mom's money? Very suspicious, right? So this brings us to the next thing. Money buys luxury and it buys material experiences. And then we have another theme with home and comfort. So home can be also translated into a metaphorical experience as well. And luxury can also be metaphorical because the true luxury, that Venusian energy, is taking care of yourself, being healthy. That's a luxury in a sense. So luxury, this connects us to the energy of greed, though I think I have that somewhere else as well. Greed, love of beautiful things, quality. So Taurus is all about quality. Taurus, Leo, they like quality. Who else likes Capricorn? Likes quality. Expansive. We got home security, comfort, coziness, creating a sanctuary. So Barack Obama, he has multiple $1 million homes, including a sanctuary in Hawaii, literally. He lives in the White House, for goodness sakes. So I would say as far as home and security goes, he lived in the most secure building in the United States. So that's crazy. That has to say that his moon in Taurus has to be pretty strong, right? Like, are you not thinking to yourself, that's got to be pretty strong for him to have created all of that? Yeah, I bet he has some insane yogas going on in his chart if you look at it. So Carolyn Myss, she's all about the inner home. In fact, she has a book where she referenced Teresa of Avila's The Interior Castle. Her book is called Entering into the Castle. So this is about the 7 levels of consciousness. And Carolyn likes 7. She likes the 7 chakras, 7 levels of consciousness. She used the metaphor of a building with the multiple floors and the penthouse being at the top. So this is a reference to a divine kingdom and creating inner stability within ourselves. As we're rising into higher states of consciousness, we will be called to create stability at each stage. There you go. So she's all about that inner stability. I really wanted to put that emphasis there. When I've seen Carolyn doing interviews in her home looks very beautiful rug. She's talked about a home experience where she was doing a renovation and someone was trying to steal money from her. So maybe there's like some affliction there going on with that Taurus energy where someone was trying to steal the abundance. But by the end of the day, she got her beautiful home. I think she talked about one time she canceled a book and she was like, oh my gosh, she like just pay for a house at the time. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose the home. So there's multiple references to home in her experience and how this is connected to her spiritual life. So Brooke Shields, her mother's dream was to live in the Manhattan West Village, and her mother achieved it. So her mother was from Newark, and her mother wanted to climb up the classes here, and they achieved that. And they were able to achieve that thanks to Brooke and her mom managing Brooke's career. And her mom was always there with her, looking after her, attached to her hip, so that she was safe. So Queen Victoria, she lived in the Buckingham Palace, for goodness sakes. Sadly, a lot of the possessions, I wouldn't say all of them, but a lot of the possessions they have are stolen. But yeah, they got all the possessions up in that place. The Buckingham Palace, she lived there. That was her home. I would say as far as Moon in Taurus goes, she probably lived very comfortably. Was able to manifest quite well. Frida Kahlo, she experienced her childhood her entire life. So this is called the Blue House. You can tour it if you're ever interested. This is a home that was near and dear to her. She wasn't that much of a fan of traveling. She liked home better. Her home was called La Casa Azul, the house that her father had built for the family and in which she was born. So strong connection to that Taurus energy. She has Moon in Taurus in the 10th house, a strong connection. Harold Shipment, his mother kept him in the house. Yeah, yikes. His mother didn't like him going outside to play with the other kids. She didn't like him being influenced by other kids. She was very possessive of him and his attention, very controlling. Moving on to the next one we have here, sensuality and physical pleasure. So sensual energy, tactile, affectionate, appreciation of touch, food, and beauty. So Barack Obama, he's known to be affectionate with his daughters and his spouse. Affectionate person. We've seen it. We've witnessed it. There's no doubt about it. And I'm sure that plays a healthy part in what has helped them to, stay connected and supportive of one another. Carolyn Myss, she always talks about the senses and tuning into the senses, especially the sixth sense. She was engaged 4 times, so I would say as far as seeking a life of pleasure and sensuality was part of that experience because she loves people, and she's openly admitted she's addicted to honey, which is hilarious, but she was serious about it. Addicted to sugar, but in the form of honey. Brooke Shields had a very active dating life, so for sure she pursued the sensual lifestyle where she got to live up that experience. She's had 2 marriages. One was for 2 years, the other one rest of her life. That's the husband she has now, been together with a long time. She's a self-proclaimed foodie, and she likes to listen to her cravings. She's also known for being sensually portrayed in Pretty Baby, The Blue Lagoon, as well, which is a bit twisted because she was basically a kid. But it's very interesting because I think of that Taurus stellium. She gave off of that sensual, she was oozing that sensual image before she even understood she was oozing it. She's just posing very innocently, but the way that it was emanating from her, it came off as very sensual energy, even from young. And that's very interesting. I don't know. I guess it's interesting to think about when it comes to sexuality and how it develops in individuals. She's also known for her virginity story. She was 22 years old. And this experience happened with Dean Cain, who played Superman. And she said he was such a gentleman, he was such a sweet guy, and he waited. And yeah, I don't know, but that was openly, she talked about that very openly. And she said it was important for her to talk about it because people kept talking about it. They kept talking about how she was a virgin, and it was just because of the sexual awakening experience of the Blue Lagoon. So it just became this open conversation about her virginity, which is just, yeah. That's a very weird thing with being a child actress. I think that's a very common theme for all of them. The sexuality thing is confusing because the boundaries are not there. You're being exposed to, her mother said she was safe. Her mother thought her being attached to her hip was keeping her safe. But all I could think by the time I was done researching Brooke was gross. I just thinking about, you don't know who is watching what and what it's just, I can see why a mother would never want their kid to be exposed in that way or just be seen like that, like, or at all. Because if you just don't know who is on the receiving end of these art, you know, they call it art. She saw it as art too. Also, yeah, she's also known for that Calvin Klein thing. And she said it was art. She saw it as art and artistic. But again, in the world of fame, where your sexuality, your sensuality is being, what do you call it? Monetized. It's being monetized. It's being exploited. The boundaries are very confusing. Like, you don't know what, you just think, oh, this is okay. Is this okay? So Queen Victoria, she grew up with a strict Kensington system when it came to food. So she had a very bleak, very strict food diet until she was 18. Then she relished in the freedom to eat what she wanted. She had a weakness for potatoes, a love of pineapple, which was grown year-round around the palace, and a voracious sweet tooth. Frida Kahlo is known for her many affairs with both genders. She loved to paint food. Her last painting that she did in 1954 was Viva la Vida. Viva la Vida, live it up, with watermelons. Very vibrant, very Taurus vibrant. She hated her puree diet. She had to be like force-fed a puree diet because she couldn't swallow it. I don't know what was going. She couldn't sit up. She experienced lavish dinner parties with her husband Diego. She loved vibrant table setups. And Harold Shipman, I don't know. We don't know anything. He was a doctor, so I wouldn't say like that's a sensuality. There's like a tactile energy that goes with being a doctor, and probably why people enjoy being a doctor is because they have the healing, or the not so healing touch in his case, the healing touch. Now let's talk about one of our first negative expressions of Taurus, hedonism and indulgence. So one can be hedonistic, addicted, overindulge, pleasure-seeking to the point of being unhealthy, greedy, gluttony, and escapism. So Barack Obama, he has a smoking addiction. I don't know if he still has it, but he definitely had one. His father was an alcoholic to the point of multiple car accidents. It was pretty crazy because his father had been in like multiple car accidents. I think they said 3, and one he had lost his legs. And then he was using prosthetics, and his father died from a fatal accident because he was drinking. So that was, I'm like, I don't even remember hearing that story out loud anywhere. You have to read about it in his book. But that was just crazy. So Carolyn Myss, she admitted she was addicted to honey. She promotes balanced health. She always talks about people needing to find balance with their health. Her brother was addicted. He had addiction issues. Brooke Shields, she is all about promoting a healthy lifestyle. She's a foodie. Her mother was an alcoholic. So it's interesting to see that some of these Moon and Taurus people, they worked harder to create more stability and work on their addictions because they witnessed addictions. I would say, definitely even for me personally, as someone who's witnessed family members being addicted, yeah, it makes you sober. I've never had any desire to do any drug ever. When we were kids, there was an opportunity, a few of them, I guess, to smoke a cigarette, and I never did because I didn't care. Now, I did try hookah when I was in my 20s, just for fun. I only did it once. That's pretty much me. I'm the type of person, I'm like, yeah, I'll try it once, and then I'm like, when I don't get anything out of it, I'm just like, I'm good. I was just like, I don't know why people like this. Queen Victoria, her addiction was men and food. She was addicted to men's attention, her husband's, and then, there are a few other men after that whose attention she was absolutely obsessed with. She was obsessed with her husband to the point where she kept his things the same after he died. She kept the rooms the same. She's like, leave it there, just dust it and keep it there. She had a passionate love with him. They were essentially the same age. She was 3 months older than him, and she was absolutely infatuated with him. He was like this tall, strapping guy. She's like this shorter, little, cute, intimidating, intense, eye-staring woman. But overall, she loved male attention. After her husband passed away, there were several other men who she just liked to keep by her. Supposedly, she didn't have any affairs with them, but she liked to keep them with her. And as we know, she had a voracious sweet tooth. Frida Kahlo, yes, her hedonism is connected to the many affairs she had. So I would say this would play into a sex addiction for sure with her partner, Diego Rivera. He definitely had a sex addiction because he was cheating. He was having like affairs on other women because he couldn't stop himself. He had an affair with her sister. And that's where Frida was like, we done, because you have disgusted me. You crossed too many boundaries, too many, point of no return. And then they got back together later. Harold Shipman's, his mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, addicted to smoking. She smoked in the house where she kept him. Yeah, the house that she kept him in, that she's like, you're never leaving. You are my perfect child. You are not playing out there with those rascals. You must be my perfect child in here. And he watched, after she was diagnosed, he watched as her condition deteriorated while she was in immense pain. And he observed physicians administering daily morphine injections to alleviate the pain. He became an addict. He started doing pethidine injections that he stole. And because he had watched his mom get injected with morphine, so there's just something about that ritual that he was addicted to, and he wanted to experience it on himself. So he stole the medicine. And then after he overdosed, he was caught, lost a job. Then he started overdosing his patients, deadly overdosing them, the elderly, most of them being women. Okay, let's talk about loyalty and devotion. Loyalty, steadfastness, reliability, and commitment. This is the moon in Taurus energy. So Barack Obama has been with his spouse for a long time. He always acknowledges his family, his grandparents. He's very loyal to those he's cared about. And moon in Taurus is so beautiful for bringing loyalty into our lives. More than likely, for sure, with a moon in Taurus, you're going to experience loyalty, like from people you care about, because moon is that nurturance, that nourishment. So you are going to be nourished with some sort of support. Even Harold Shipman, who had this deep resentment and was doing dirty things behind the scene, had his loyal wife with him. She was loyal to the very end. So for Barack Obama, he dedicated the Anne Dunham Water Garden at the Obama Presidential Center in her honor. Because of a lot of that has to do with her unconditionally loving nature. Carolyn Myss, both of her parents were loving and present. You know, she had a very loving relationship with both of her parents. She had a connection with Dr. Norm Shealy, so she's always referencing him in her workshops and about how much work they did together. They essentially, using her medical intuitive skills, she would essentially tune into patients and help them know what they need to heal. And he was the doctor. And then she has this love, this devotion for Teresa of Avila. She's absolutely obsessed with Teresa of Avila. Funny enough, you know, I don't know if you would say I'm obsessed with Carolyn Myss, but I have like a deep appreciation and love for her. Like, I love her workshops and the things I've listened to her say. Even before I watched a lot of her videos, I've been channeling some of those things. So I do feel a connection to her. There's not a lot of people I can relate to when it comes to the spiritual perspective, but she's the one I relate to the most so far. So how far does Carolyn's devotion go? How does she define God? She defines God as not love, but she says God is law and order. That is how deep her devotion is. She believes in the law. So when she's going around teaching people to be empowered and to heal, she's teaching them law. She's teaching them the mystical laws. She says that mystical cosmic love shows itself as an order of justice and consistency. Consistency, Taurus. There you go. An order of justice and consistency. That is what true love is to her. It's consistency. It's the way that life really is. She, as far as loyalty goes, she broke away from tradition. Like, she told her mom, hey, my life is going to be different. I'm not going to be this, married woman with kids kind of thing. I'm interested in dedicating myself to my career. And she dedicated herself to, journalism at first, studying theology, And then she sort of stumbled into becoming a medical intuitive, even though her intuitive abilities were there since she was a kid. So Brooke Shields, she was the center of her mom's universe. Her mom had dedicated her entire life to her and struggled to take care of herself. So as far as loyalty and devotion goes, she knows exactly what that looks like because her mom gave it to her. She has had up to now a 25-year marriage with her husband. So I would say that takes a lot of devotion and commitment. Queen Victoria actually found letters her mother had written her, kind of like love letters or notes about Victoria in her childhood. So she had resented her mother because she felt like she didn't have that great of a childhood, but in her mother's letter, she saw that her mother actually adored her. And then she felt guilty about her mother passing away, and she was really sad, when she learned about that. And when her mom passed away, it was fast because of old age. Her mother was an exemplary grandmother, even after her mother was shunned from living in the palace, like Victoria. And she stayed committed to Albert even after death. So she's known for being committed to Albert. She's known for her commitment to him. Now, he was a sun in Leo, so he also knew a thing or two about loyalty as well. But yeah, she stayed committed to him. She's known for the image of mourning his death. Some people say realistically she only mourned him for 10 years. And then after that, she was living more freely, doing what she wanted, with who she wanted. Not to that extent, if you know what I'm talking about. So Frida Kahlo, both her parents were devoted and caring towards her. They helped her to recover after her accident. And she also had some sort of loyalty with Diego. She remarried him after he had an affair with her sister. That's why they broke up. I mean, I think that was a nail in the coffin kind of thing. But he took care of her until her death. Yeah, he helped her financially. He supported her. Even though they were fighting constantly, he was there for her. And Frida valued loyalty more than anything. Harold Shipment, he was loyal to his mother. He was so loyal that he wanted to experience grief and death, and he wanted other people to experience that too by overdosing those patients. After his mother died, interestingly enough, similar to Victoria wearing all black after Albert's death, as a widow, he wore grieving clothes. He wore grieving clothes after his mother passed away. And the kids in school were like, why are you wearing black? Like, nobody knew that his mother died because he didn't say anything. His wife stayed loyal to him after he was charged. His wife stayed loyal to him. Because he was always supportive of her. He was always taking care of her. And people can have very much a dualistic personality in that sense. Moving on to our next category. We have possessiveness and control. So Taurus energy, the negative aspect to it is that it can show up as possessive, controlling, jealous, and very attached. Now you put the moon placement in here, you're creating someone whose psychology and mind can be very attached to circumstances or situation, needing to stay the same. So for Brooke Shields, her mother actually strapped her in as a newborn. So previously her mother had lost a child, and at the day after she had given birth, the child had passed away. And then later on, her mother had her. And to make sure that she was born premature, I think by 2 months, so she was 8 months or 7 months old, coming out, and her mother kept her strapped to her while she was sleeping with a mirror in front of the baby so that she could see that the baby was breathing. To her mother, Terry Shields, Brooke was the center of her mom's universe. And Brooke admitted that her mother essentially wanted her to stay a virgin, her virgin daughter all her life. When she had gotten into relationships, those served as a way for her to separate from her mother. So that's very common, a currency. Is that the word I wanted to use? But that's pretty common for women in general, in order for them to create separation from parents, for them to get into relationships with other people or partners. So her mother had a way of being subtly jealous. She sought her mom's approval, especially with every relationship she was in. She said she took her mother with her. So her mother was, kind of possessive, kind of controlling, but very loving and supportive. So she did look to her mom's approval. It wasn't like an angry, the relationship was fostered off of a lot of, I guess you could call it love, human love, kindness. So the way that her virginity story was huge, I think we'll get to that later, but she got with Dean Cain, and he was the first person that she was with. And I think that served to break apart the detachment, along with other relationships she was in. Her first husband was a professional tennis player, Andre Agassi. I think that's how you say his name. Agassi. He was possessive and jealous of her success. And 2 years into their relationship, they got a divorce. It was peaceful, amicable, but while they were in the relationship, it was very unhealthy attachment dynamic. Queen Victoria's mother was controlling in a sense. This is what served to sever their connection with one another. She had essentially, as soon as Queen Victoria became a queen at the age of 18, she had essentially severed her relationship from her mother. And this had to do with the fact that her mother chose, I think it was Sir John Brown, but it was a man who was serving himself, saying that he was putting all of these protective measures in place called the Kensington system so that Queen Victoria could be protected and her assets could be protected. But it created a bleak situation for her childhood. So in that sense, her mother ended up controlling her childhood experience. And so Victoria became attached to her nanny, actually. And that was who she took with her into the palace and kept close with her. So Victoria was obsessed with fantasy. So that's the obsession here. She was obsessed with her husband. He was, she was absolutely besotted by him. He was handsome, but the certain accounts, according to her journals, show that he was sort of controlling. And I would say that would be a pretty common dynamic of a man, especially in the 1800s, especially in the royal system. A man who was born a prince, I would say that's pretty common for him to feel like he holds some sort of power dynamic in the relationship. And here's this woman who's a queen. In order for him to assert himself, he may be somewhat controlling in the dynamic. So he used the relationship to gain power, but his reputation was also that of someone who was highly respected and who created opportunities, who helped the poor, and he helped to put the castle in order. He also helped to clear up bankruptcy or just corrupt things going on, and he held a grand experience. I forgot what it was called, but it was a sort of event where people from all around the world came to, I think, talk about their inventions, and it ended up being highly successful and very lucrative for them. So he made some great business moves. Victoria was young when she got into the position of power, but there was a somewhat controlling, very tumultuous dynamic between the two of them. They said that he essentially would punish her whenever she didn't behave. Again, that's very common dynamic for people who don't go to therapy. Then there was another man named Abdul Karim who also used Victoria. He was from India. And Victoria had a fascination with India, never went there. I don't know if she ever traveled outside of her country, honestly, but she loved hearing about the stories and the experiences, and he introduced her into the cuisine and curry and stuff like that. But her attachment to him and other men, she gave them privileges, essentially, that controlling, possessive kind of, or attachment energy. And that served to create a split in the dynamic with the people who were also around her and were serving her. She had a not so great relationship with her kids, and I think she could actually be somewhat controlling of her kids. She had a particularly negative relationship or response to her first son. Bertie is who they like to respond to him as, or young what was her husband's name? Prince Albert. Yeah, so I think they called him Bertie because he was also Albert as well. So she was essentially jealous of her kids getting her husband's attention. And she was pregnant 1 month into having babies. So yeah, that's it's just crazy to me that she was obsessed with her husband because she barely knew him before, they had gotten married, she'd gotten pregnant, and then she started having kids. She had gotten pregnant right away. So pretty much their entire marriage was them with kids. So it's like, where on earth did you have time to process just fixating on the husband and not even, developing attachment to kids? Now, granted, I will talk about her sun-moon conjunction in the conjunction episode series part. That conjunction can be very difficult because sun is very dominant and it's masculine, and it's about power. So it can be a very harsh planet when placed with moon because moon is more nurturing, but sun is an authoritative. So it's always going to boss people around. So whereas her moon energy could have made her more nourishing and giving to her kids, instead of doing that, she was more of the boss, right? And more detached. And also the nakshatra placements could tell a lot about that as well. So Frida Kahlo experienced a lot of jealousy with the women that Diego had affairs with. The license, he had the license, she had, but they stayed attached until she died. So even though he was older than her, twice her age, she ended up passing away because she had so many health ailments that she was facing, and they had gotten divorced but married again, after his affair with her sister. And that was because of attachment. People said their relationship was tumultuous and not healthy, but they were attached to each other. And it served to keep them in that cycle of controlling energy, possessive energy, jealousy. So Herod Shipman's mother was very controlling. She was an overbearing mother, and she projected her ambitions onto him because she felt unaccomplished. She was an illegitimate child, so it's no wonder why she felt insecure, and she felt this need to project all of her desires onto her son, and ambitions onto him. Because of that, he took on those similar traits. He thought it was a good thing, and he became very attached to his mother. Harold was essentially the golden child. She had other kids, but he was the golden child, the favorited one. He acted like it. He was haughty and entitled because of it. He wasn't allowed to play with the other kids, so she was keeping him in the house at home, building the superiority complex within him, this God complex, and building up his false sense of worth and self-esteem. And this made him dominant in his household. So he was dominant in his household. He married a farmer's daughter. So I would say in that relationship dynamic, someone who's very educated, who's pursuing the path of becoming a doctor, who's taught all their life that they are entitled, would play a dominant part in that relationship dynamic. But it worked. Him and his wife were pretty much with each other until him unaliving himself. He played a dominant role in the household. He ran. Now let's move on to another trait. We have stubbornness and resentment. So Moon in Taurus can make someone stubborn, resistant to change, and someone who holds grudges. So their mind is resistant to change, which means it's good for meditation, right? It's good for stillness, but it's not good for flexibility or fluidity, and life is all about change. So that's where it can become a bit negative in its expression, and it can make one hold grudges, which Harold was very good at doing. So we have Carolyn Myss. I put her here just because I said she's stubborn for seeking the truth. I think stubbornness is actually, I have it negative here, but I think stubbornness can actually be a positive trait if it helps you to stay true to yourself. Stubbornness when it comes to change, though, can be very difficult. So Brooke Shields, she admitted in an interview that she didn't have the best temper. She's stubborn and is impatient with herself. So she admitted that, I don't know if she was in her 20s or 30s. She did an interview on a talk show back in the 80s, I think. And she admitted that herself. Queen Victoria, she held a grudge against her mother until her mother was essentially diagnosed with ailments because of old age. So I wrote cancer, but it wasn't cancer. Her mom died of, to clarify. I would probably erase that, but to clarify, her mother just died of old age and, just probably wearing out over time, health-wise. Frida Kahlo, she suddenly married a man 20 years her senior at the age of 22. So even though her parents, her family were a bit concerned, her father was more accepting, even though her father made a joke saying that she was the devil. He's like, she can be an angel, but she's the devil. And her mother had a different perspective. Her mother said, oh my gosh, it's like an elephant getting with a dove or something like that. I think that's what she referred to it as, because he wasn't just twice her age. He was also significantly bigger than her. Frida was this petite, stubborn Mexican woman, of German Jewish heritage as well. Yeah, they had multiple affairs. Diego was married 2 times before her. She was the 3rd wife, and then the 4th wife I jokingly put here because they remarried and got back together. Yeah, there was constant bickering between the 2 of them. So there was a deep resentment between the 2 of them. She felt resentment at her condition as well. And she had a bit of stubbornness where she resisted her condition. She just wanted to live up life. She would put on a mask and try to enjoy it and live life to the fullest. But I just pick up there was a lot of resistance in Frida Kahlo's energy, just the way that she lived her life. And what I see in her chart, I just pick up a lot of resistance and stubbornness. But it also served her. It helped her to endure, which is the next topic we will be discussing. So Harold Shipman, he resented his mother's death. He took revenge on 250 patients by administering pethidine overdose. He didn't take his lower level class colleagues seriously. His colleagues, the higher ups, he respected. He would put on a mask, a face to his patients. He would put on a mask of the good doctor. But when he was with his lower level colleagues, he was not so nice. A bit of he preferred to work alone. He didn't really like collaboration or even feedback from those group of people. So endurance and inner strength. So Moon and Taurus can make a person long enduring. When it comes to pain, grief, they build up this immense amount of resilience, strength, and perseverance. So Barack Obama, he received massive criticism throughout his entire career, but specifically due to his presidency. Everyone always has something to say about the president, and whatever his opinions are, you're going to get an immense amount of criticism for the work that you do in that role. But he would always respond with grace. I never saw him get out of character or be upset. I've never even seen him upset. He's just always calm and steady and focused. So he carried through 8 years of presidency, though people tried to tear him down constantly, and they would do everything and then some to try to tear him down because there wasn't scandal surrounding him. There's the theories, there is conjectures about possibly what's going on behind the scenes and his involvement with the government and some shady groups and the Illuminati, but there's no evidence of anything. And I'm just he just looks like he's carrying so much on his shoulders. I don't think he has time for all the scandals that people be making up about him. I honestly just think they're made up. But that said, what I can see represented in the media is that I don't see anything. I don't see that he's done anything. Caroline Myss stayed true to her spiritual path, even in the midst of a spiritual crisis, possibly losing her home at one point after canceling a book and having mini strokes. So she's had, some health issues with mini strokes. She connected this to Teresa of Avila, who had similar experiences. She said that back in the day, the saints, they would have a sort of physical come to God, come to Jesus moment where they would see angels and they would have these energy surges where their body would go through something painful. And John of the Cross is a very good example of someone who's gone through a spiritual crisis. He wrote The Dark Night of the Soul when he was jailed and imprisoned because of the reformation that was happening around the church that he partnered with Teresa of Avila to participate in. So Carolyn really related to that story. I've gone through spiritual crisis. I'm kind of going through one right now, but I guess once you go through different layers of it, it becomes easy to take on. I don't even want to say easy. It just becomes normal. It becomes normal because you understand that it goes hand in hand with raising to higher states of consciousness. So that takes an immense amount of endurance, because when I think about the things that I've done or the choices I've made, all I can think is that I don't know anyone in my, like, personally in my life who would do what I've done. And I've been on the edge. I have been on the edge psychologically. It really pushes you. So she stayed true to her spiritual path since she was young, stayed true to her faith and divine. Brooke Shields, she lived under the limelight her entire life, under that massive pressure all her life. And she always responds with kindness and grace. So becoming famous at 11 months old, that is a karma in and of itself. Her massive stellium with her moon in Taurus is sitting in the 10th house of responsibility and long-term effort. So when people are talking about her and how she's changed, and by the end of the day, she's just been humbled, more honest, more human, and she lived. She didn't stay the little girl or try to freeze her face. She lived. Towards the end of her mother's final days, her mother was diagnosed with dementia, and that was also something she had to endure because her mother was essentially forgetting her, which was crazy because her mother had this massive attachment to her. Now her mother was forgetting her. So that was something she had to endure, and that was very difficult for her. Queen Victoria had a 63-year-long reign. I would say for sure she embodies the sun, moon, and Taurus in the first house. 63-year-long reign. As a woman in power, that was a big deal at the time, which is why her image is used as an image for empowerment for women. Now, if you really studied her and got to know who she was, you'd be like, maybe not. I personally wouldn't use Queen Victoria as a symbol of strength for myself personally, because that's all about, like, that's an illusionary version of what strength looks like. And they will tell you, like, the royal family created a whole image around it. It was all about marketing and publicity. Even her husband understood this. So they used the image to their advantage to gain approval from the public. So the public would be appeased to let these people rule over them. This is how illusions work. But when you can see through them, it doesn't faze you. You're not interested in giving the royal family your power or putting them on a pedestal. But in spite of that, she held her own against the men who tried to challenge her. Men constantly tried to challenge her. They tried to put her in her place, including her own husband. But the crazy thing is she outlived pretty much almost all of them. She outlived her parents, which, her father passed away when she was 8 months old. So never really had a relationship dynamic there. She outlived her parents. She had to endure the pain of not having, parents and the disconnection from her mother. So that was long enduring grief for her. She outlived her enemies. She outlived her husband and 3 of her children. So I would say that takes massive endurance to be able to do that. Frida Kahlo managed 30 years of chronic pain and many years of emotional pain. From age 6, she was diagnosed, or she contracted polio. And it messed up her leg, and she had a limp from that point on. So she was always born different, physically different. She knew this about herself. But she deeply wanted to accept herself. And then it just seemed like life kept throwing her more and more obstacles. A pole going through and shattering her pelvis. And then getting, I think she had gangrene on her feet, and then having to, essentially have her leg amputated and being cast for all of her life and be bedridden for so long. It was a lot. On top of that, her parents had their own illnesses and her family struggled with poverty. She endured the passing of both of her parents. She witnessed both of her parents passing away. The 1925 trolley accident resulted in multiple fractures to her spine, collarbone, ribs, and severely crushed her pelvis and right leg. I mean, ouch. And in the movie that I watched with Salma Hayek, they put an emphasis on the nails. There's a portrait she does with all the nails inside of her. There's this emphasis, everything is just in pain. How on earth, with the lack of painkillers they had back then, how on earth was she putting up with that kind of pain? and still putting a smile on her face and celebrating life. That's why we recognize her today, because she is a symbol of strength, someone who really put up and faced a lot, held her own. Harold Shipment, what he held on to was unprocessed grief, unfortunately. He became a wounded healer killer. So when someone is deeply wounded and they don't process those wounds internally, they externalize it. So they end up hurting people, hurt people, right? And Harold Shipment is a perfect example of this. So he couldn't handle that. He had so much unprocessed grief, and he was essentially a coward because after he was caught, he didn't divulge anything. He kept his mouth shut. He looked like a sullen child, and he took his life shortly after. So he was 58 years old. He was meticulous in his approach to things. He was meticulous. He was consistent, 250 plus patients. So he repeated this pattern over and over and over again. There is some sort of endurance in that, but it's the wrong kind. And eventually divine will put a stop to that. So he targeted the elderly and the older people who were probably closer to the final years of their life. And he thought he would take control of their ending, but that was never up to him. He does represent having some sort of endurance. When you're pursuing the path of becoming a doctor, it takes a lot of study and work to be able to do that, certifications and whatnot. Moon in Taurus can make someone very creative and expressive. So creative, expressive, it can definitely give someone artistic talents because we're having this Moon and Venus energy. Those are feminine energies combining together. And for sure, this person has a love for food, culture, beauty, colors, vibrancy, music. There's a love for all of that. Barack Obama has displayed this when he is celebrating. Like, he is known for celebrating. Part of that is that Moon in that 5th house. That Leo-esque-ness, he also has Leo in his chart, will make someone want to celebrate life and enjoy and indulge a little bit. He always indulged a little bit in enjoying people, shaking their hands, getting to know them, having fun. I would say when it comes to his artistic talents, he's wonderful at being a great speaker. Great speaker. Very magnetic person who's loved and adored for openly expressing his feelings. He's pretty transparent. I wouldn't say he shows all of his feelings, but he's pretty transparent in terms of describing vulnerability, difficulties, and the challenges that he's gone through. He likes to use humor to ease people. So his humor is a talent in itself. He can put people at ease. He is talented with knowing people and relating to them. He's also had multiple high-profile portraits of him and his wife done. So just recently, he had the Obama Legacy Center that was created, and the timing of that was crazy because I didn't even know that was being done when I was working on him for this Moon in Taurus video. But there it is. But he's had multiple high-profile painting portraits of him and his wife done. So these are going to be worth millions and millions of trillions, millions of dollars in the future if anyone ever buys them. Carolyn Myss. Spiritually a very creative person. Originally, she pursued the path of becoming a journalist, and she wanted to write books. She wanted to write fiction, but she didn't have the talent for it. What she had the talent for was tuning into the divine. And so this is what helped her to become a bestseller writer. She's also known for archetypes, tuning into the magic of archetypes. It's part of that is that her 7th house energy. 7th house is always about contracts. So she talks about sacred contracts. She wrote a book called Sacred Contracts, and the archetypal types is understanding people's contracts. So we all have archetypal contracts. I have the artists. That was my path for some time, and it shows up in my video content from time to time as well, and also my writing. So archetypal legacy. If you are ever interested in understanding your archetypes, please go ahead and check out Carolyn Myss's work. So Brooke Shields. She's known for being a talented actress since she was a baby. So the reason why she scored, I think, a Ivory soap commercial coveted spot as a baby was because she knew how to smile on cue. I think that's what it was. She knew how to smile on cue, and she was beautiful. So one of her talents was just beauty, with that Taurian energy. And yeah, I mean, it's a take your breath, beautiful kind of beauty that she had. It was very natural, effortless kind of beauty that she had. She's stunning. And that beauty worked in her favor. Part of that, looking at Brooke Shields, she's a tall woman. So I think part of that is she just had strong bone structure. And I've actually seen that in meditation for earth signs. Sometimes they can have very strong bone structure. It can make them very beautiful. So she just had very strong bone structure as like a young girl, and it showed through. And then she had the height on top of that. Perfect for modeling. And then she also has great comedic timing. If you've ever seen Brooke Shields do comedy, she does great with comedy. I didn't know her, the Pretty Baby, or that was her. Actually, I think I remember seeing her as the older version of her in other stuff where she was doing more comedic stuff. And then I realized, oh, this young girl, in this 80s movies, that's her. That's crazy. Queen Victoria, she's actually created a bestseller diary. So what's interesting is the moon in Taurus, this Taurus creativity shows up as more personalized, right? Where someone is experimenting with creative energy. And it almost seems like Taurus people seem to tune into creativity almost effortlessly because of that Venusian connection, where they're experimenting with creating something, or they're using their hands to make something, and they're not trying to be a master of it, but there's some sort of attunement. There's an instinct for how to make something look pretty or beautiful or put together. So Queen Victoria had an instinct for selling bits and pieces of her diary that ended up being a bestseller, where she captured the scenes with her experiences in her diary. She was taught to keep a diary and memorize all the things in detail. So I'll go to one of the next topics I have is writing. All of these people had something to do with writing. So I thought that was interesting. And I was like, do they have air energy? And no, they didn't all have air energy. But Taurus energy is still very creative. So even if it's in words form, it could still make someone really good with words. So you'll see a lot of actors actually have Taurus energy because they're very creative, they're very expressive. And Queen Victoria was actually known for being quite expressive with her big eyes. So Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo is the artist. There's really not much else to say. I was talking about me having the artist archetype. Frida Kahlo is the embodiment of the artist archetype. Sometimes every artist has to go through that starving artist period for sure, where they're just like, dang, I ain't making any money for my stuff. And Frida had those experiences. And that's how you know they're a real artist. Some people might say that's not true. But the money part is more of the businessman or entrepreneurial spirit. That's a different type of archetype. The artist is a sincerely creative, person who has to express themselves. And Frida definitely had that down pat. She was constantly painting throughout her entire life. I also like to call her the psychological surrealist. She's very good at diving into her own psychology and expressing herself. She also wrote a lot of letters. So that's how people were able to get in tune with who this woman was, because she was constantly writing letters throughout her life. She had to express herself in some way, shape, or form and convey to people how she felt. And she is a Leo ascendant. So next category we have is class, elegance, and refinement. So one of the common themes I noticed for Moon and Taurus people was classism, excellence, quality, manners, refinement, and sophistication. So Barack Obama, his mother enrolled him into elite schooling in Hawaii, where he was raised by his grandparents. And his mother wanted to raise him to be respectful and educated. And this man ended up at Harvard Law. So I would say when it comes to class, he ended up rising to the elite class. He became the president of the United States. Immediately, that puts you in the 1%. Carolyn Myss, she experienced excellence, yes, sure. Excellence in being a bestseller writer. And I also feel like her, when it comes to refinement and quality, because Taurus to me is about quality, fabric, how good something looks, how beautiful it is. So that's why they have such a strong connection to fashion. Carolyn holds her students to a high regard in terms of quality of their spiritual development. She doesn't baby her students. She always tells them to challenge themselves, dig deep. So I would say she's probably part of the elite class now. I think her network is 1 to 5 million. But I also connected this class and elegance energy and quality energy to the penthouse she likes to always refer to. So that language, the use of calling it penthouse. Penthouse is expensive. And she said a friend of hers had that. So she's probably experienced a lot of friends who've had money and, she's had a good time being with them. So she gets to experience that class and elegance with the people around her. Very common with Taurus people. Brooke Shields, her mother emphasized how important it was for her to learn manners and be kind. And her mother did not like it when she would swear. Her mother wanted to pursue the path of living in the Upper East Side of New York, and she achieved it. So I would say Brooke Shields is definitely part of the elite class with a $40 million net worth with her husband. She also attended Princeton. She's very intentional about having a great education. It's so interesting, and in contrast to that sweet dream girl, naive girl that came off in the movies. But later on in life, she wanted to come off as mature and educated and smart. What's also cool, I would say all earth signs come off as teacher pets. All earth signs tend to make great students because they're consistent, they're routine, they're very good at doing homework. And Brooke said she really took it seriously doing homework and she wanted to be, good at it. What was the other thing I wanted to add? Yeah, she went to Princeton, and also she gives off this like career woman energy in a lot of the movies that she does now. Very Queen of Pentacles. So Queen Victoria, she experienced the Kensington system, which is what her mother created with, I don't think it was Sir John Brown. Wasn't it Sir John Brown the person she was close to? But it was a different person who's her enemy, whose name I forgot to write down. But they created the Kensington system, which decided what she would eat and how she would live and that she would never be left alone. It was very strict way of living. So she was essentially raised into classism, with her being part of the monarch, and she is the elite class with her being a queen. No doubt about it. So her whole life was all about, perfect manners. Like that is the echelon, what do they call it? The highest echelon of manners and classism as a queen. You are expected to know every little bit of detail when it comes to propriety and protocol. She did something where she mastered a glide to look elegant when she was walking. So Frida Kahlo, even though she grew up in the lower middle class, with the help of Diego and her father's network and her own personal charm, she raised to the upper middle class. She possessed elegance and sophistication that allowed her to blend among an eclectic group of people, including elites. So she had a sort of elegance. She dined with these people. She ate with them. She talked to them. And though she related more to lower class people and she was more humble and down to earth, she could talk to these people. She could engage with them. She was educated. She went to a private school, I believe. I think it was, I don't know if it was like an hour bus ride away, and that was the bus she ended up getting into an accident with. But she had a really good education because her parents wanted her to move on up, and she did want to pursue the path of being a doctor. So, yes, I would say class was definitely involved, and sophistication was involved with Frida's lifestyle. Harold Shipman, his mother raised him to be entitled. Yeah, so I would say classism was definitely part of his life experience. He was raised in the working class. I believe he didn't have the best relationship with his father, or maybe even approve or care for what his father did. But after graduating from Leeds School of Medicine, he attained the esteemed social and professional standing of an upper middle class physician. Yeah, and physicians are known for being a little bit more up there when it comes to their upper middle class, right? They make a little bit more money than most people. His position and facade allowed him to not be questioned for decades. So he used classism, he used his position to his advantage to serve as a facade. so that people didn't question him. They didn't wonder why, I wonder why this guy's patience is dying, which is why he was able to get away with it for so long, is because of the assumption that people make when they look at other people and they look at their status. The next topic we have here is image and charm. So Moon and Taurus people can be quite charming, or they can be good at they can be charming, or they can be very good at putting on a charming facade. They can be very good at maintaining appearances, and they may put a lot of work into their public image. So Barack Obama, he's known for his cadence when it comes to his speaking and his speech. Great speaker. I kind of copied and pasted this from the other place. He's loved and adored for openly expressing his feelings with humor and ease. He's easygoing, relatable, uses self-deprecation, and he's a gentleman. So I would say, as far as image and charm goes, he epitomizes a role model, like what men or people want to be like. You know, people always feel proud to see him as their president or as a person because of his kindness and the image that he exudes. Very strongly charismatic and calm, cool, collected. Carolyn May, she's also easygoing, relatable, and uses self-deprecation. So she has a very strong personality, I would say. Strong personality, easygoing, very good at connecting to people. When she connects to people, when she's sitting next to them, she's connected. Like, she's very kind of like, what's her name? Drew Barrymore. She likes to get up close and personal with people. And yeah, so and the only reason people would let her into their bubble is because of that charm, that easygoing nature, the humor. Brooke Shields, same thing. She said she was very intentional about becoming accessible to people and using self-deprecation because she wanted people to see that she wasn't this perfect, ideal daughter, girlfriend, or wife. She wanted people to see that she was a flawed human being, and that was a very important part of her expression when it came to the books that she wrote. She wanted to show people, hey, I'm normal, just like you. I have problems just like you. I have insecurities just like you. She wanted to shadow this idealistic image that people had of her. She wanted to age, gracefully. So I would say when it comes to her public image, it's gone through transformation over time. But one thing is for sure is she's always been a kind and humble human being. But she's allowed her image to transform over the years. She's allowed herself to age, to mature, to become wiser. Queen Victoria was known for having a commanding presence, and, her eyes could be quite intense. She gave off a strong matriarch image that was used to derive favor from the people. So that strong matriarchs showed people that, hey, we, the British, are strong. We are built on strength, and so let us colonize your land. Frida Kahlo had an intense stare. She also could be quite theatrical, which is very much courtesy of her Leo ascendant. She had a habit of masking her pain with her personality. So even though she was constantly in pain, she would just get louder, she would get brighter, she would smile more, laugh bigger, louder, to mask the pain she was in. But also fire signs are natural comedians. Harold Shipman, he cultivated a persona as a highly confident, intellectual, and compassionate family doctor, the good doctor. Yes, so he cultivated this persona on purpose so that people would not question him about his other shady ways of being. The next topic we have here is writing and preservation. So Moon and Taurus makes someone expressive. So this person wants to express themselves, but their senses are attuned. So they tend to be quite good at record keeping, documenting. Therefore, how are we going to express this other than in writing, right? So they may express it in writing, documenting. They're very good at preserving history or memories. So Barack Obama, for example, he wrote Dreams for My Father, The Audacity of Hope, A Promised Land. And in these, he explores his identity, family history, his political philosophy, and a vision for America, and his experiences and reflections from his presidency. I think his biographical book was 1,000 pages. It was long. He's known for having an incredible memory and memorizing details about people. Caroline Myss, she had this fascination with history. So her father participated in World War II as a Marine. And interestingly enough, we have that in common. My father was also a Marine. She pursued the path of journalism because she wanted to dive into history. She wanted to make a difference in the world. She thought journalism would be her pathway. She got a master's in theology. Then she partnered with someone, created a book publishing company. She was a book editor and writer. The Anatomy of the Spirit is one of the books she wrote. Very well-known bestseller. We have The Sacred Contracts. And then the question that shaped her entire career was, why don't people heal? Or why people don't heal? And how can they? She had this intuitive abilities, and she could sense what was wrong with their bodies. And she could feel as to why. Oh, you have this because your relationship with your mother. Or you have this because you're holding on to grudges. So that's why she's so passionate about helping people to heal. She doesn't want to see people sick and hurting themselves. She focuses on spirituality, energy medicine, and archetypes, personal healing, and the connection between emotional and physical well-being. She speaks consistently on prayer. So a lot of her wisdom and knowledge is built around learning how to use prayer as a tool to connect with divine, understanding it's very important that we pray. We pray for others. We pray to grow. And she puts a huge emphasis on praying for others. Don't just be so self-centered and focused on yourself. She's all about shattering the ego. I would say her Pluto and Leo in the 10th house definitely helps with that. That is going to teach you what authentic power is. Also why she exudes such strong power as well. Brooke Shields. She wrote Down Came the Rain, There Was a Little Girl, and Brooke Shields is Not Allowed to Get Old. These are some of the few books. I don't know if she's written more. I think those are the main ones. In her books, she's written about postpartum depression, her childhood under the influence of her mother, who was an alcoholic. She's written about aging, womanhood, and her identity in the public eye. Yeah, I would say the 10th house is very public, but she's found a way to, reclaim her empowerment and be as authentic as possible. Queen Victoria. She has extensive journals, letters, and published collection Leaves from the Journal of Our Life in the Highlands. Okay, that was what she published. That was a bestseller. Yeah, and I think she had a fascination and a love for Scotland. Oh, I wrote it here. She recorded her daily life, family relationships, grief after Prince Albert's death, her travels in Scotland, and her views as a monarch. Ooh, scandalous. She was trained to take notes from a young age. She was trained to memorize things. And I think with that sun and moon in Taurus, she was very good at that. Very good at taking notes, very good at memorizing details. And then there was that experience where she had read love letters from her mother about her childhood. And again, there's this importance around letters and preservation. Frida Kahlo. The Diary of Frida Kahlo and numerous personal letters have been published, so we can see and get insight into what her life was like. Her diary combines paintings, poetry, and the reflections on pain, love, politics, creativity, and her identity, offering insight into her inner world. Harold Shipman. He was meticulous with record-keeping routine, and he was ritualistic in his process when he would take the lives of others. Part of why he was able to get away with what he did, because he falsified the records to make it look like he was innocent when he was not. Moon in Taurus, all earth sign energies call for some sort of healing because they're very much connected to Mother Earth. Moon in Taurus is the embodiment or the epitome of Mother Earth energy. So here with this placement, one may be called to share in their healing energy, be an advocate, or be a dependable helper. They want to be dependable and reliable and help people out in some way. I would say Barack Obama exudes some sort of healing aura, very pleasing, very peaceful aura. People can say what they want to say about him. I've always sort of got good vibes from him. But I don't know. I've never done an energy reading on him per se. He's attentive. He remembers details, including inside jokes. He projects an air of calm. Even in high-pressure or surreal environments like the White House or doing small, unexpected run-ins, people frequently mention that his calming presence makes others feel immediately comfortable. He can be intensely focused, launching initiatives to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve soil health. He had the Obamacare, which is the Affordable Care Act, organic farming, which he helped to participate in climate-smart agriculture. So that is a external expression of what healing can look like. Oh, let's create Obamacare, affordable care for people when it comes to healthcare. So, yeah, that was part of his legacy when it comes to healing. Carolyn Myss is known for being a medical intuitive. She advocates for the mind, body, and spirit health. People use psychological language for spiritual crisis and spiritual issues, is what she says. Medication is the last thing a person needs, she says. That's why she wrote a book called The Anatomy of the Spirit, The 7 Stages of Power and Healing. She advocates for the human and the spirit and the soul. Brooke Shields, she's talked about her personal healing journey. That is what her writing is about. It's about her healing. When she's processing her mother's alcoholism and attachment, and she's processing the inappropriate and confusing boundaries she experienced as a kid. She's all about advocating for women's health, and she's very transparent about her postpartum experience where she didn't take medicine with her first child, but for the second one she did. She felt weird because she wanted children and she didn't understand why she had this disconnection to her daughters. So she's very transparent with that. In the beginning, she's very close with her daughters today. Queen Victoria, she was known for animal welfare, and she participated in making pain relief socially acceptable for women in childbirth after her 8th child. So she had already had 7. Maybe without pain relief, I have no idea. But by the time the 8th child came, she was like, all right, we got to change things up. Frida Kahlo is known for her mind, body, and spirit healing journey expressed through her paintings and her artwork and her writings. She used heavy plant imagery in her works. So she intuitively was connecting to something quite powerful in those imagery. There's a reason why those images tend to strike something within us deeply, and maybe even uncomfortable, because Frida was willing to see the uncomfortable and unpleasant parts of herself and reveal that. So as far as healing went, she had polio as a kid, had to heal from that. She had the pelvic and spinal fractures that caused decades of agony. She underwent roughly 30 surgeries throughout her life and was often forced to wear restricted plaster, leather, and steel corsets. She essentially had chronic pain her entire life, since the age of 6. So Frida was often forced to wear restricted plaster, leather, and steel corsets. She experienced traumatic miscarriages and neurological pain. Howard Shipman, he was a doctor who hurt people. He was a hurt person to hurt people, and he manipulated over 250 of his elderly patients, particularly women. So instead of healing, he was hurting. He did excel with clinical skills in anatomy. So he had the choice to heal and help heal people, and he was good at those doctor skills, but fortunately, he used it to hurt people. Now, the final category I have here is purity. Purity and innocence. So sometimes Moon and Taurus have an association with purity, purification, because of that healing essence. Moon is exalted in Taurus energies, particularly Kritika, where it experiences a more fiery, transformative purification. So one can be purified or go through purifying experiences. They can experience being infantilized, like Brooke Shields. There's a connection to innocence, sweetness, or an untouched or idealized image. So I think the way that Barack Obama represents as well is that he's a human, according to the human design, he's a projector. And so projectors, we tend to project on them, our ideals onto them, and they feel the need to become like role models or perfect in their approaches to things. So like perfectionists in their public image, particularly. So him and Michelle are known as the modern ideal power couple. They still are. And they probably always will be. I don't know if there's going to be any shattering of that image. But part of what makes them ideal power couple is actually their relatability and their humanness. Caroline Myss is known for her pure-hearted approach to teaching purification of the mind and the consciousness. Brooke Shields. She's essentially infantilized by her mother and the public. So according to the public, she wrote a book about not being allowed to age. Her mother probably didn't want her to not be her sweet little girl or daughter anymore. People fell in love with her innocent features. So that was the thing that attracted people to Brooke the most, was her innocent features, like those doe eyes. Like very sweet and innocent. Queen Victoria, she would act immature behind the scenes. But in front of the scenes, or in the scenes, she would give off a pure and honorable, nurturing, and domestic ideal image. So I reference this as the modern trad wife life style influencer title that some people have on them, trad wife lifestyle, where they look like they're the traditional wife. But in this case, she was a queen traditional. So it's a little different because people are cooking for her. She's not the one cooking. But she gave off that ideal image. You see all these marketed images they have of her with her husband and all of her kids. Wow, it looks so ideal and perfect. It looks like she's just like the perfect wife, and we should give these people our money and let them rule us. So Frida Kahlo, she explored the concept of purity in her personal diaries, where she defined the color blue as the embodiment of electricity and purity. In her artwork, she also evoked themes of innocence and purity. Like, she would use children, she would use her childhood self, she would make herself a baby in certain images. Like Portrait of a Woman in White, while frequently blending these spiritual and symbolic meanings. Harold Shipman used a pharmaceutical-grade diamorphine, medical heroin, that was 100% pure. He obtained these pure supplies legally by over-prescribing the controlled substance to terminally ill patients, stockpiling the leftovers, and stealing unused vials from the homes of patients who had recently died. He typically injected victims with a massive lethal overdose of pure diamorphine, signaling false death certificates attributing the use to old age or natural complications. And he targeted elderly women mostly. Yeah, so correction, I think I said that he did the pethidine, but the pethidine was for him. That's what he overdosed on. But the diamorphine was for the patients. That's what he used. And I'll have to correct that in print somewhere. While being questioned, he never took responsibility or accountability. So that's a devolved expression of Taurus. Taurus is about responsibility. He did not take responsibility for his negative actions. Sure, he took care of his family. Sure, he was running a business as a doctor, and he probably took care of his kids. But when it came to this other responsibility, no, he did not take it on. In fact, when he was put in jail, he would sit there like an upset, sullen, silent child, looking stubborn and infantilized. So you can see that he definitely had some unresolved mommy issues. Now, something I'd like to talk about, I kind of referred to it when it came to image and charm here, but Queen Victoria's Taurasian front. Now, if we go into detail here, what was the reputation of Queen Victoria? So she was known for having rehabilitated the monarchy with her husband after the extravagant corruption of King George IV and King William IV. She was focused on morality, strict family values, and civic duty. She was a public-facing charitable institution that the middle class respected. After her husband died, she went into a deep depression, withdrew from public life, and spent 40 years in black mourning clothes. She became a humorless, stern matriarch. So we're talking about the Taurasian transformation of her image because she's an ascendant Taurus, so she fits this perfectly, and try to understand it. There was a massive resurgence afterward, and she was known as the grandmother of Europe. Her children were married to royal families across the continent. She became a towering symbol of stability, continuity, and British global power. Very much sun and moon. She was a beloved national icon by the time of her death. In truth, her nurturing mother figure was used by the government to mask colonial British imperialism takeover in India, Africa, and Ireland. She was anti-feminist. She saw herself as an ordained exception to the rule. So as opposed to being an advocate, she was not advocating for herself, truly. She didn't believe women deserved to vote. She condemned women's suffrage and fought against the women in male-dominated roles such as higher education and professions, labeling them unfeminine. She was an elite, sheltered by the monarchy. She had no understanding of the reality faced by the working class women. From a young age, she was indoctrined and heavily programmed. She only cared about herself and her own advancement to get what she wanted when it came to power. Ironically, her image was used to support the early suffragists. Yes, Queen Victoria. We might as well shatter the illusions while we're going through this Saturn and Pisces transit. It's time to shatter them. Whatever illusion you had, it's time to shatter it. This is no 1960s TV program here. Yeah, so we have the images of the stable monarch, perfect family. Oh, look at her and her supportive husband, tall Prince Albert. We have a final journal entry from Frida Kahlo, written in April 1954. I've achieved a lot. I will be able to walk. I will be able to paint. I love Diego more than I love myself. My will is great. My will remains. Yeah, I wanted to kind of end or share that bit of poem because it's important to show what was the endurance. By the time her life was ending and she was, passing away here, she lived till the end. She wanted to live till the end. She wanted to keep going. She endured. And this is showing the hope, the beauty. This is what that moon in Taurus created for her. She could have been like, life sucks. I don't like anybody. Life sucks. And I'm sure she definitely had those days. And she wrote some of that in her journal. But I love that she wrote this as her final entry. And it just goes to show the strength of that moon in Taurus. Now let's go ahead and refer to some final notes and close out this presentation with some final thoughts. Let's talk about roles as parents. Now, moon can show where or how we nourish. It can also show how we were nourished and how this impacts how we nourish. I wonder, how were these people nourished and how did it impact how they nurtured? I want to talk about the psychological state and facing karma with grace. So karma is an important part of, why we're here in human and what we're here to overcome. This is an important part of my series because I want people to understand how they can make better and healthier choices for themselves and use the strength of their moon sign. The other theme that showed up for me was obedience to parents or tradition, because Taurus can get us stuck in that system and in that tradition. If someone has heavy earth in their chart, like a Brooke Shields, they can very much get caught in this system, right? There's this heavy karma being born into a fame system, but she didn't choose, but it was chosen for her. And then she became a part of her entire life, right? And I wrote here as one of my notes that when it comes to true obedience, the obedience, when we are obedient to the highest, which is divine, who tells us to be free, to love, to laugh, to play, and to break free of the system, we are truly free. So Barack Obama, he established an inner-outer security, but within the confines of the system. Within the confines of the system. So he was very much about the system. Becoming the president of the United States, sorry to say, that is very much system-coded. So I would say that Moon and Taurus played a role in keeping him stuck in the system. He thrived in it. He looked good in it. He's a Capricorn ascendant. He's got Saturn. He's got a debilitated Jupiter sitting in his ascendant. And so instead of hoping for divine or connection to divinity, we're hoping for a system. We're hoping for ambition. So that's the trap of the earth sign energy can keep you stuck there. I love looking at these lovely pictures of Obama with his mother here. Looks like he had a very beautiful, happy childhood, and his mother was very caring, very loving towards him. also go back to Obama's role as a parent. So Obama is known for being a parent, right? He's known for being a good parent, very present, allowing his kids to be free. I think it helps that his moon is in the 5th house of kids and play. So he knows how to play, and he understands the importance of kids playing. So we always see him with his wife. We always see him with his kids. We see the connection there. It's real. So I would say as far as him being nourished, it taught him to just be human and to connect with other humans. And he always puts the emphasis of knowing people and seeing them as humans. So that is how his moon in Taurus served him, is this ability to just connect with others, to understand the significance of their individuality, to recognize it, to acknowledge it. And so he nurtured that for his kids, he acknowledged their own independent expressions, and he likes to use a lot of humor around that. As far as facing karma went, yes, he got stuck in the system. His mother was a bit free-spirited, maybe a bit whimsical in her approach. You know, she had those 2 marriages and then 2 divorces where the marriages didn't last. You know, she didn't really know his dad. She was 18. She was 18 when she had gotten married to his father and then had him shortly after. So she was kind of a young mother and just kind of figuring things out on whim. But there wasn't any kind of like slow pacing planning. So Obama lived his life the opposite. He and his wife waited a long time until they finally had kids. And when they started to try to have kids, it was hard, you know, because they had waited a little bit longer, you know, a little past the fertile window, so to speak, but they still did get their 2 beautiful daughters. So they very much cherished being able to parent. So it was about endurance, patience, waiting. That's where it played a part. And he probably was obedient to his parents. He just looks like he had really good manners, and he listened to his parents. His mother would send him off independently to like travel and go places. And, you know, he was a smart kid. He was very practical minded, where he would think of, okay, let's do this, and then step 1 and step 2 and step 3. Now let's talk about the spiritual director, Carolyn Myss. She broke away from tradition. She told her mother from early on, from like age 7 or 8, hey, my life is going to be different. I can sense this. I can intuit this. So she broke away from tradition to follow the highest calling. Even though she was raised up in the Catholic Church, she enjoyed it. She loved the history and all of that, the saints, the magic. She brings it up in her teachings. She did not believe in religion. You know, she saw religion as politics. She sees God as law and order. So she was all about law and order and following the highest calling of divine. I would say her parents were very nurturing, caring. It seems like she passed on this trait, but she also made it her own. You know, she decided, hey, I'm going to nurture the world. I'm going to become a divine mother instead of having my own kids and getting married. I would say as far as facing karma, there's probably no one on this list of people who knows karma and grace better than Carolyn, because she teaches it. I learn under her. She is my spiritual director. So I would say for sure she understands this very well, the dynamic of how things work and operate. Moving on to Brooke Shields, the Venusian dream girl here. So she's got a massive stellium in the 10th house with that Taurasian energy. So the thing about stelliums or massive stelliums is they're hard to control. You know, I think there's a little less freedom because there's more rigidity that's created because there's a heavy emphasis of the placement of that chart. Now, if someone has like a sun conjunction somewhere, or there's like a purification conjunction happening, like a Kazemi, then maybe someone can choose like higher pursuits. But I find that stelliums are a lot harder to control when it comes to a person's dynamic. I've heard someone say that a lot of people have stelliums, but then that would also challenge this idea of how many people are able to attune to freedom, because the planets they seize you, right? They pull you into a certain kind of consciousness. And I would say with a heavier stellium that pulls you into a heavier illusion, that's harder to break free. And in fact, it made her the dream girl illusion of other people. Like, people absolutely projected their fantasies and desire onto this woman. And I think it's incredible. She has like a powerful Venus moon conjunction there. Gee, no wonder why she's known for beauty. I haven't really like deep dived into her chart yet. I will be when I start looking into the other placements here. What she did break away from was she broke away from the perfect image through acknowledging insecurities and embracing imperfections. That's what worked in her favor. How her mother nourished her mother was caring, very loving. So she wanted to be a mother, caring, loving. She wanted to get married, but she wanted stability. So she waited later in life. She thought carefully about choosing the right partner. Her first marriage wasn't a success. She got out of it quickly after 2 years. It was mutual. And then her second marriage was a long-term, healthy marriage. She waited a bit longer. That's why she struggled with infertility and having her kids. But it ended up paying off in terms of creating endurance and stability for her family and creating a solid foundation for them to create a life together. So I would say she learned from her mother's impulsive choices. Her mother was a single mother, kind of like Obama's mother, who was also a single mother. They weren't as intentional when it came to partners. Part of that had to do with the fact that they were young. His mom was 18. I don't know how old Brooke's mother was, but she was a single mother. Her father and her had separated, so they weren't able to stay together. But she loved being a mother, and so Brooke wanted the same experience for herself, and she ended up having daughters as well. So she knows exactly what it's like to raise a daughter, and I'm sure that's a very much full circle experience for her. And I think that's quite a karmic full circle moment for her, where we're closing out karmic cycles, and I'm pretty sure that's what Brooke got to do. But as far as divine nature goes, I would say she did find divinity in breaking free of those limited roles within herself. But she's very much a part of the system, with that massive stellium there. And look at that. She's a Leo sun, just like Frida Kahlo. I just put that together. Oh, that's crazy. Very fitting. Apura Falguni. Or Uttara Falguni. An Uttara Falguni Leo. Arts. Natural affinity for the arts. Next we have Frida Kahlo. So we got 10th house moon in Taurus. She's a sensual artist. Her mother was very traditional. Her and her mother were complete opposites in terms of how they wanted to do things. But Frida was about family. She had love letters or letters that she had exchanged with her mother, where there's an exchange of affection and appreciation. Throughout her life, when she was experiencing her chronic pain, her mother was there, always being supportive. Even though her mother didn't agree with some of her choices, her mother was still there. So I think Frida definitely felt nourished and somewhat, supported growing up in the family dynamic. She wanted to be a mother. She had miscarriages. She wanted to be a mother. So there's, again, a theme around infertility here with this moon in Taurus energy. She wanted to, but she couldn't. She tried, but she couldn't physically. It wasn't possible. But what ended up happening is that she needed that nourishment. Now, I don't know, with all that chronic pain, how she would have been able to be present in the child's life all the time when she had so much pain that she has to deal with within herself. So her journey was about focusing on back to herself, and I think she was able to spiritually mature immensely because of that. But by the end of the day, again, she made impulsive choices, and she was, as far as spiritual adulting goes, I feel like she was just kind of beginning her journey. We have Queen Victoria, the patriarchal matriarch. Had a very difficult relationship with her mother, very resentful towards her mother her entire life. So this made her, she was so kind of like a narcissist, right? We got that sun in the first house, and that sun is blowing away the moon because there's a 2-degree difference there. So sun is combusting the moon, so moon is being dominated. So the nourishment is being kaput. The nourishment is just disappearing. She's starving for nourishment from her mother. And because she was starving for nourishment from her mother, she didn't have it to give to her kids. But she looked to her husband to nourish her, probably, to support her and give her that love and support that she needed. But she didn't know how to be a mother because she didn't feel nourished. She was very much wounded. So she ended up continuing the cycle of pain and hurt. There was no breaking of cycles for Queen Victoria. I think she just dug herself a deeper grave with her choices. Yeah, so she was all about living with immense amount of resentment. The karma that she did deal with was the power karma. She had an immense amount of responsibility that she was bestowed upon. To be born a queen or king or a princess is not good luck. That's like, whoa, you are literally, like, there's so much heavy programming being pushed upon you when you were born into royalty that there's like no escaping it. If you've seen royals try to get out of royalty life, it's like everything just shatters for their life. It just becomes so chaotic. It's almost impossible. So yeah, there was no breaking free of that. What she did do was she found some empowerment in herself. She found self-expression. So yeah, I'm sorry for the kids not having a mother there, but I think she found some sort of strength and endurance within her to be herself. And that's kind of, when you see her dharma, it was to focus on herself. She got K2 in the 5th house of kids. Her dharma was to focus on herself. So that's what she did. And even though the kids weren't nourished, and it was a very karmic experience for her having kids, she was at least able to learn how to express herself. And that's what her mother probably wasn't able to do. She had more freedoms than her mother did. But she did it all within the system. She was all about the patriarchy. What can we say? The last one we have is Harold Shipman. So Harold, he created more karma, massive amount of karma for himself because of that relationship dynamic with his mother. Harold became Dr. Reaper. His mother raised him to be entitled, and this is like the crazy thing. Whenever you do research about these people who have monsters inside and they let that monster out, is often they are raised with entitlement or a lack of true nourishment here. He was so fixated on his mom's nourishment, he felt resentful at these elderly women for being alive, and he wanted to mess up their lives because he didn't like that they got to live on and be happy when his mother wasn't here. So he was a mama's boy, and he was a mama's mad boy, unfortunately. So Harold created more karma for himself. He was not able to handle the pain or endure. He passed away or unalived himself at the age of 58. He would have lived longer, and he would have lived longer if had he just done the right thing. Role as a parent, he participated in his kids' lives. Now, I don't know the depth to what he was a parent. I imagine he was probably busy. His wife was the homemaker, but from what you can see in these pictures, he liked being around his kids. His kids give off a certain similar vibe to him. He liked having a family. So I would say, yeah, he liked participating and nourishing his kids, but his nourishment had a limit, as we can see. And that's all there is to say about Harold Shipman. The other thing I wanted to add for the planetary relationship to signs, I thought this is important to note for the Moon and Taurus people. When we zoom into our chart here, it says Moon is exalted in Taurus, and Taurus is its Mula Trikona sign. Mula Trikona. Mula Trikona means that it's where it feels very comfortable. I thought Cancer would have been its Mula Trikona here, but it's not. The neutral energy here represented is because Moon has a neutral relationship with Venus. So another reason why Moon does so well in the Taurus energy. So yeah, it's called Mul. Oh, it is Mula Trikona. See, I thought I was saying it wrong. It's a fundamental concept in Vedic astrology, denoting a specific zodiac sign where a planet feels the most balanced, steady, and focused. Steady and focused. Let's go ahead and close out this Moon and Taurus presentation with a poetic visual. Chandra in Vrishabha, Moon in Taurus, the strong, the stubborn, and the beautiful. Nourished to be strong, this hard-earned bull will be called to root the emotional mind deep into the earth, so as to grow a luscious garden or an organic empire. Whether a building is erected in their name or tarnished due to their infamy, they leave a mark on society. One's senses can be elevated, making them a hedonistic seeker, a pain avoider, or a tuned-in antenna who becomes more whole over time. Whatever pieces of mother's pie that were left unfilled, they will be called to fill it. As mother's nourishment sits on a spectrum of stability to instability, care can become possession, sustenance can become overindulgence, and advocacy can become cold ambition. One chooses which creative traits to activate and how they want to use them. But this will require devotion, maturity, true advocacy, and heart. With the psychology of the bull, what doesn't break you builds you. With each learning experience, Moon in Taurus must learn to build an indestructible fortress, brick by brick. Only then will they have unlocked the true power of this placement. All right, beautiful souls, I hope you have a beautiful day or evening whenever you're watching this. I'll see you next time. Bye.